I'd like to welcome all of you to this CRA meeting on this Thursday, February the 6th, 2020. We'll call this meeting to order, and we'll ask that everyone please rise for a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Chair Nathan Blackwell.
Here.
Vice Chair Lynette Matheny. Here. Member Dave Askew. Absent. Member Chuck Cooper.
Here.
Member Keith Trace.
Here.
Member Joel Davis.
Here.
Member Dwight Loading.
Here.
I believe this time our Vice Chair has some presentations to make.
Awesome. It's weird to be on this side. I'll keep this short and sweet. We really appreciate everybody that serves on committees in the city of St. Cloud, especially the two gentlemen on the end of our dais up here that are serving on our board. I know you guys are all very busy, and I appreciate you donating the time to the city and providing your expertise and skill and knowledge to help us make decisions to move the city forward. So it's Dwight Loading and Joel Davis, in case you guys didn't know. But thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we have some small tokens of appreciation for your assistance.
Purse. Thank you.
Purse.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you. Thank you. What do we get?
And I just echo that same sentiment. We're certainly grateful for the investment of time and giftedness that you bring to this board. Thank you so much. At this time, we will entertain the approval of our minutes for December the 5th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Davis and a second from Ms. Matheny. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And it so carries. We'll begin with old business regarding the Mackinson Building update, 918 New York Avenue.
Good evening. Andre Anderson, Community Development Director. I'd like to give you an update on the Mackinson Building, and we had received 3 letters of intent for the property, and I'll just briefly run through each one and then get some direction from the board as to how we should proceed. The first letter of intent that we received was from Accomplice Beverage Company. They are a brewery and cider works facility that was located in South Florida. They were the first cider works in that area and opened in 2015. Their product is deeply rooted in German and English traditions, producing cider and mead, and this is from their website. The owner of the business is here tonight to answer more questions, but just to give a general overview, the owner of this company has actually relocated to St. Cloud, and they have made an offer which was accepted on another property in downtown St. Cloud, 1016 Florida Avenue. And in fact, we held a pre-application meeting with them last Friday, to discuss the proposal for this site, which is to be a wine tasting room, and also the site of their corporate headquarters for Accomplice Beverage Company. They plan to relocate the entire business in this region, which generate upwards of 16 jobs, which are high-paying jobs, and would actually be a benefit to the city. So they made an offer on this site as well, and actually are interested in also making an offer to purchase the parking lot that is on the north side of 10th behind this facility. And they're also interested in other properties that the city has as well. And he can speak more to that if you like. The second company that also offered a letter of intent is American-made beverage. They are currently in the Orlando area. They have their distillery in the Winter Park area and produce vodka and limoncello. And they produce, bottle, and sell those items, as I said, in Winter Park. And from their website, the statement was, simple and smooth taste to enhance recreational drinking experience. The next letter of intent is from the Parsons Group, and they are currently, you may be familiar with them, they're mostly I think in Kissimmee. They have several concepts, Three Sisters Speakeasy. I think Breeze is one of their concepts that may still be in operation. And again, I think the representatives from that firm company are here to also speak to you tonight. And they, I think, also have Shipwreck in the Islands and Abracadabra Ice Cream Factory. They have done development in the downtown Kissimmee as part of their city center, so they're familiar with our needs here in the Historic District. This is a breakdown of the letters of intent, so you can kind of get a side-by-side comparison. So Accomplice Beverage Company, they made an offer of $450,000. They are offering a $5,000 deposit, and then after 60 days of due diligence, they'll then put up another $17,500 for a total of $22,500. They'll conduct a 60-day due diligence, and then they'll be able to close within 15 days of that date for approximately 75 days. American-made beverage, they made an offer of $395,000, and they have a unique proposal for a lease purchase agreement. They did not specify any deposit, nor did they specify a time frame for due diligence. That they did indicate in the letter that they would need a due diligence period, but it was unspecified. They are proposing to have the first 6 months rent-free that would be focused on the redevelopment of the space. And then months 7 through 24, they would pay some agreed upon rent that would go into what we'd consider an escrow account that would be applied to the deposit to purchase the building. The Parsons Group made an offer of $450,000 as well, similar to Accomplice, but theirs is a 1031 exchange, and they also offered a deposit up front of $22,500 with a 45-day due diligence and a 45-day closing for a total of 90 days to close. To date, we have expended $417,026.07, and that includes the purchase price and all the activities associated with building stabilization, which on this slide has a more detailed breakdown of what we've expended to date. $381,000 for the purchase, and then you'll see the phase 1 and 2 environmental assessment, the roof repair, the mold remediation, removal of the creeping fig, the clean and pressure of the exterior, the porch demolition and removal, and electrical work, and also the vacant lot appraisal and a survey, again, for a total of $417,026.07. I'm going to jump to the next item because it's sort of related. In well, actually, I apologize. Let me back up and allow the developers or the owners to at least speak to you if you wish to kind of hear their proposal for the LOIs before I go
Is that
on.
what the board wants at this point?
Is there someone here from the Accomplice
Yes,
Cider Works that would like to speak to the board?
yes, he's here.
Please come forward at this time. State your name and address.
My name is Matt Stetson. I'm from the Accomplice Cider Works. I'm actually located now, as of last month, at 1024 Florida Avenue, right here in downtown St. Cloud, which I'm very much so having a romantic involvement with. I love it here. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. I come from a small town in upstate New York, and it is very similar to this, and I miss that. I came to South Florida, and I watched South Florida grow into a behemoth and lose its identity. And so coming here, finding a town so rich in culture, and so just beautiful in its, both its aesthetic and in its people. It's really meant a lot to me coming here. So that's one of the main reasons why this, I feel, is the perfect location for not just a location of the Accomplice, but also our corporate headquarters and everything that we're doing. I can see a lot of growth potential here while preserving the history, because I myself am pretty hardcore about preserving history and culture. I'm a student of music composition and history, so all of these things are very, very super important to me.
Councilmember Trace.
Pretty much the same question. I'll ask all three of them if all three groups are here. I know it's early on in the process, but what's the vision for the property and redevelopment timeline and some of those other items?
I think we'll move rather quickly on that particular property. I see there's a lot of potential there for our company as well as for the city. What you've already done to improve the district makes it prime for what we want to do with it. Ideally, there's really two different sections of that building. There's a front section and a back section. The rear section is what I understand is previously a warehouse for what was once upon a time a hardware store. We want to convert that into our manufacturing space. It has a heavy-duty slab on it. It has three-phase power in the back. It has drainage ready to rock and roll. It has a grease trap ready to roll. It's ideal for what we want to do with it. So we would land tanks there and start producing beverages in that back portion. The front portion, we want to actually convert into more of a showcase showroom. So we would want to bring in, let me tell you a little bit about what we are already. We've been producing beverages for 5 years. We're in distribution in Central Florida. 70% of our production that we make right now in West Palm Beach comes to Central Florida. We're in key places like SeaWorld and Disney World. We're in Disney Springs. We're part of the new Epcot expansion. Their cultural tap program that's going to be coming in. They're rebuilding a whole building, putting like $10 million into it. We're the lead product on that project, so we're already there. We're already in the city tap, or the Disney Springs tap house is what they call it, in Disney Springs. So we're very much so in touch with the touristy side. We have taps in most of the Lowe's resorts. So for the Universal properties, we're currently at Portofino, the Caribe Royale, the Cabana Bay, Volcano Bay. We have in SeaWorld itself, every single place that you can drink an alcoholic beverage on tap, we have those taps. So we have a lot of really key, amazing taps that we haven't been able to capitalize because our tasting room is in West Palm Beach. So when someone Googles us and says, that's nice, they're in West Palm Beach, we'll have to visit there someday. And so what we want to do is we want to capitalize that and draw that tourism and all of that, basically all of that interest in our brand, and not only from our hottest market, which is the Orlando market, but also from those tourist centers. So we want to bring that business down into a showpiece, sort of a gift center, tasting room, a place where people can get the Accomplice experience, take tours, and enjoy the whole Disneyized side of the business that we do, and bring a lot of co-traffic into this area for the city to enjoy as well. So hopefully giving a boost to your hotels, your resort spaces here. I'm not sure if we have Airbnb here yet. I've looked a little bit. It doesn't seem like there's much, but I can see that booming. I can see things really taking off on that aspect of it, and sponsoring events and things like that to go along with that. So we think there's a real potential here for what's called beer tourism or alcohol tourism. We want to kind of harness that and bring that in, building on what we already have going for us here. So with that said, that's where the other pieces that we're looking at become really important that are also in the downtown, because we also want to, away from that, bring people away from that space through the downtown area to other locations on the outside, which will be our tavern-y spaces, more like brew pub style places, giving the locals a place to hang out and enjoy having us here and us enjoying having the locals here. And then at the same time, if someone does want to go for the entire experience, giving them more locations and bringing them by the other businesses that are already here and doing well, Brews and Blues and Fire. And we've made friends with all those guys. They're awesome. And honestly, I think that putting us on the bookends of a downtown area that's centered at that location would be wonderful for everybody. So that's kind of the idea of what we see anyways.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you. Any kind of thoughts of maybe turning it into a restaurant also?
We will have a small amount of food there. You got it, because it's part of being a responsible alcohol establishment is offering some sort of food. A lot of breweries will put food trucks up because it's easier to do. Now, there's an existing kitchen there with hood and, like I said, the grease trap and everything else is there. So we would do a food portion as well in that location, but ideally, just kind of wet their whistle on the food side and pull them away to the other locations as well. So we want to do a food dynamic, but we want to just kind of give them a taste there. There was not going to be, once we open the tourist center side of it, there'll be some seating there. But the real idea is to generate a buzz for the entire downtown space and not just be warranted.
But I feel like we need a whole lot more restaurants downtown.
Yeah, we want to
than
open
what we
3.
got.
Yeah, we're actually in the process.
Some of them are closed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We need somebody
Yes.
that's going to be at nighttime and, it's going to bring
I'm with you.
it downtown.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. In fact, we want to work with a lot of local restaurants as well. So we do want to, like I said, we do want to have a food aspect there. There's a kitchen there ready to rock and roll. So we do want to offer
What
a
kind of food would you have?
Well, that's a good question. In that particular place, because it has a full hood, I would probably bring in some of our locals down south, Tucker Dukes and things like that. They're good friends of ours to kind of consult on that. In that particular location, I think elevated, pub grub really is ideal. It's a brewery, so, doing like your burgers, single serve pizzas, things like that, there would be good. Using the combination of other aspects, like what we're looking at a second location at 1016 Florida Ave, in that particular location, we'd be doing tropical cuisine there because we want to call that paradise in the cloud. So we want to have that paradise aspect there, bringing in more of the local citrus, bringing in more of the local aspects of what the history of this area was, and doing that in combination with the cuisines there. But the difference there is that there's more of a kitchen and preparation space. Currently in the 918 location, there's a tiny kitchen, so there's only going to realistically be so big of a menu and so much of a restaurant that you can have there
But
effectively.
you have much more parking facilities right here than you would out there on Florida Avenue. I can tell you that right now.
No question. That's why we also want to integrate a bike service. So we want to be able to have people park here in the epicenter and then at their own convenience grab one of our bike services to go.
Okay. What kind of money are you going to entail to put into, if you buy that, what kind of money would you spend to?
On that
Bring it
specific
up.
location, yeah, on that
I'm sure
specific
you'd have to
location.
do a lot of inside, outside, more than what we've done.
Oh, yes,
We
yes.
just brought it to where, let's keep it where it's dry so you don't get water coming in.
Yeah, the roofing intrusion and all that, some of the mold, issues that are there definitely were addressed, and that's wonderful. But it's very interesting because for me, it's more of a historic restoration project. So we'd want to restore the floors. We'd want to bring in some tables and things. We'd want to keep it simple and harness the original idea of what that building was. So I don't think we're going to do a complete overhaul and rebuild of it and turn it into something it wasn't. I think the idea is to more keep it what it is. So we want to keep that a little bit more of that rough aspect to it by more of the restoration side. That bar will probably come out of there. We'll rebuild a bar, but I realistically foresee probably $100,000 to $150,000 in that front space. And because we're using the back space for industrial, it won't require a lot of renovation. So it's really mostly just that showcase front space that's going to need to be kind of polished, and the rest of it needs to stay raw because if you make it too nice, it's going to get wet and ruined anyways.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Member Loden?
I have a couple questions. Same here. I'm going to ask each applicant the same questions. One was on the restaurant aspect of it, and if you have any experience in the restaurant business in the company that you're in now. I mean, I'm just asking if you have any experience. That was one of my questions.
Absolutely. My family has owned restaurants since the time I was born. I have 7 chefs in my family. I'm a level 3 advanced sommelier. We've actually personally, I've owned 2 wine bars and a restaurant, and I've also been a part of my family's businesses as well.
Okay.
Oh, and my tap room, of course, which is currently open.
Next question. After closing, looking at the building, you've seen the building, I'm not going to hold, I'm not going to hold you to this, but
Sure.
what's your projected, what do you think as far as the time frame is to open that up to what you want to do?
Oh, that's like rubbing the crystal ball. Yeah, ideally, and having done this a few times now, I would like to be open by the end of the year. A lot of that's going to have to do with permitting and codes and how fast we can get through the approvals process. As far as getting the construction side, I don't think it's going to take very long. That building is, yes, it's rough, but it's not so rough that it can't be quickly recovered. And we're not afraid to throw some money at it to get it done in a prompt way. So I think our biggest holdup is going to be getting through all of the the hoops. Realistically, it's going to take largely that in time. So it's hard to say how fast the approvals, you maybe more approve, many of you are business owners, so you know how fast the codes guys work here. I don't. So it's realistically going to be chiefly held up on that note, I think, because we're ready to rock and roll. And we've already talked to some of the construction companies here, as well as bringing some of our designers in from back home. We've got a nice plan already ready to rock.
As far as, you talked about your extensive background. That was one of my other questions, is just how long have you been involved in management of this type of business that you're proposing for 918?
So for 918, as an alcohol manufacturer, I got into it for the first time as an administrator with this facility that we opened in West Palm Beach. So I've got 6 years of actual leadership of a manufacturer. I've been in distribution and restaurants my whole life, like literally since I was a kid, teenager. I've been working in restaurants, but I've been in distribution, I've been in retail, I've been in manufacturing. I worked in Napa, so I've worked in Napa and Sonoma in manufacturing. I've had a lot of hands-on experience, and so for me to take over the reins as the leadership of the Accomplice was sort of a natural transition, really.
Okay. Where you're located now, where you have a facility now, how long have you been in that community?
Wow, so that's cool. So I moved to West Palm Beach when I was 3 years old. It's really heartbreaking for me to lose that, I guess, leave, South Florida. It is home for me.
I was kind of looking at how long have you been established there as this type of business?
We've been there 6 years now.
Not necessarily how long you live there.
Yeah, 6 years as a manufacturer of alcohol. Okay. We were the first cider producer in all of, actually you can go Central Florida down. We were the first cider manufacturer. We were the 4th in the state. It was very super innovative at the time that we were doing it, and it still is. We have more registered styles of apple cider than any other manufacturer in the world. For original created innovative styles, we've created more than any other manufacturer. But no, we've been there, making an impact, good solid 6 years, and they're still growing in that market. It's just that the market's changing down there, and we feel like there is more advantage for us to come up here. Like I said, the communities up here embrace us more than South Florida. South Florida is very much so it's South Florida. It's boat drinks. It's a lot of cocktails and a lot of things like that. And so up here you have more of the blue collar powerhouse than the super high end multi-billionaires like we're getting strongly down there. More millionaires per capita, and what they say in Palm Beach and Boca than anywhere in the world. And that's really what that area is turning into. So my hometown is growing away from what we do, and it looks like Central Florida is growing into what we do. So sometimes new home is in order.
Okay, I have one more question, and it's just, I think I can ask this question.
Sure.
Other than the monies, for your down payment and your closing to purchase this building, mm-hmm. How much liquid capital do you have readily available to bring this building into specs where you need it to be and to get it up and operational?
We have a commitment for $1.5 million currently from our investor group, and it's all in paper. So we have investors like a gentleman by the name of Peter Villari. His family sold Ingersoll Rand I guess about 15, 20 years ago. They sold it to the current holders of that company. We have another investor, Harold Kalt. He just, actually, he and his son just sold their online music company to, of all places, Etsy. I don't understand why they would want it, but they sold it for $300 million. I have Ryan Sense, who's an owner. I have no idea why they would sell it or buy it to them, but that is what it is. But we have Ryan Sense from Funky Buddha as one of our consultants. He's a consultant investor and wants to put money in this. He's Funky Buddha was just sold last year for 125 or 2 years ago now. I'm getting old fast. $125 million was his company was sold. So we have some heavy hitters that are.
So this will be a this is going to be a partnership, or?
No, we're a corporation.
Okay.
So there'll be a stock share. Well, there is a preferred stock share going on right now. So we're putting the offer up, and if we are awarded the building, and I hope we are, if we're awarded the building, we would simply go to those phone calls. And I honestly think those two gentlemen, Harold Kalt and Peter Valari, I don't think is going to make it past those two guys. They're in our facility drinking weekly. They love us. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Cooper?
The food portion that I was
Your
asking.
mic up.
Excuse me. The food portion that I was talking to you about it, the hamburgers and hot dogs, to me, that's not what I'm, looking or
Yeah. No.
to
No.
see. I'd like
Yeah.
to see something a little bit, a nice sit down, and you can get the whole nine-yard spread. So you could do a little more than hamburgers and pizza, because we got pizza and we got hamburgers all over St. Cloud.
I would love to do, tartare and filet
I'm looking for
mignon
you
in that
to tell me
location.
what you are and you're going to do, not just what you'd like to do or thinking
Sure.
about doing. I want to know what you're going to do.
I mean, like I said, in that particular location, and it's going to depend. If we're selling high-end premium meals, if people are coming in and dining on those things, then we're going to offer them. There's no question. And sure, absolutely, I'll be more than glad to take a shot at it. The gentleman who's Tucker Dukes, and yes, they're an elevated burger establishment, but they also have a full menu that's exactly what you're talking about. They have tenderloins, and they have tender cuts. They do pâtés. They do things like that as well. So it's a elevated burger joint. So it's one of those things where it's comfort. It's t-shirts and shorts friendly. They don't have white linens on the tables, but they have a full menu that's very, very high end as well as a burger joint.
But you're sounding better on this side, what you're saying now, than what you did at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The
You know what it
hamburgers
is?
and- it's just not what I'm looking for.
Yeah, we're not in South Florida, and I'm sorry. Tucker's has 4 locations in South Florida, and they're very well established down there. So I have to remember that you are not familiar with who Tucker Dukes is. The gentleman won, I think, 4 different TV competitions. Chopped. He won the grand champion of Chopped. He won Top Chef. He's a chef. And they have a tenderloin. It's a burger, but it's a brioche bun with a tenderloin in it. They do an au jus, that's a French dip, but it's all prime beef. It's really elevated cuisine. His stuff that he does is tippy top. I would definitely urge you to.
So if we were to give you this purchase here and let you have it, then you would okay to agree to put that in the writing that you're going to have a restaurant and it's going to be a top-notch restaurant, not just hamburgers and pizzas.
I'd be willing to get Brian himself to write a letter. He's a very good friend of mine, so I'd be willing to have Brian write a letter saying he was going to be the consultant chef on the
Could
project.
you handle that too? Make sure we could get that wrapped in tight, where we'd get a restaurant that's not just a,
I'd be delighted. I'm a foodie, man. I'm there. I would love to do it. Of course, we have to be able to sell those foods, and I just want to make sure that we keep that in check. I can offer the best menu in the planet, and if nobody's ordering the food, it doesn't do any good. So I just want to make sure we put that in checks and balance. I'll open up the doors with a menu that will. The guys at Disney in their finest cuisine restaurants will go, that's a menu right there, but it has to sell. And I'm just being realistic. I don't know that it will do fantastic here. It may, and if it does, that's high profit stuff, man. I'm in.
okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Matheny?
Thank you. I'm going to have some questions after we hear a few of them, just for the attorney, actually. But you just said you would have Brian write the letter, and who is Brian? Is that
Brian
the chef?
Casari is he's the head chef
That's the chef.
of that project. Yeah,
Okay.
he recently sold his stock out, which is why he's interested in this. And I can't make any commitments for Brian, but he's looking in this area also.
Sure.
So-
My concern for any of the offers is kind of the concern my fellow members here will hear me say it all the time, is that, you know, people can come up here and say anything to us, and then, you know, I trust that you're being honest with what you're saying, but anybody can come up and say anything to us, and then we sell the property, and then they can flip it or do something, you know, so that was something I had talked to the city manager about, was whenever we figure out which way we want to go, I wanted to have maybe a reverter or some kind of commitment into some kind of teeth into the agreement, right? So you couldn't just buy it and then flip it and then
I would gladly
have
sign that. If
it'll
you wanna,
have like a tire shop or something.
yeah. Oh, no, God, no. But I don't even know tires. I can't tell you what tires are on my car, so in all
Me
fairness.
neither.
But so,
Me neither.
but and I'm a little embarrassed to admit that, but it's okay. But truthfully, I will be glad to sign any of that, because the truth of the matter is I really need this to be. As far as doing a high-end restaurant, I have the wine bars I had. I loved them. I absolutely loved them. But the problem is where we had put them, and this is why I'm kind of like, I always put that disclosure in there of it's got to sell. We put a wine bar in a place in Wellington that we thought it was going to knock the socks off. It had sushi, it had filet mignon, it had tenderloins, it had pate, all these things that we're talking about, these classic cuisines that are just so good. And we closed because we didn't sell any of it. And we stayed so committed to a menu that wasn't selling in a neighborhood that should have been interested, that really wanted a burger place. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where sometimes you can will something. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to maybe have, if we're going to sign that, I'll sign it. We'll open that up and we will have the amazing menu. That's not a problem. I would love to. But maybe put like a rider on that says something along the lines of, if we can show that it's not selling, that we can maybe give the neighborhoods what might be something they would buy.
Well, the thing I was talking about wasn't as specific as what Mr. Cooper was wanting. I mean, I don't think we could really dictate what you have to sell and as far as food or anything for
Yeah.
me. I mean, I know whoever it is will do what's profitable for their business. I don't know that we could get into the meat and potatoes of it. I'm just concerned whenever people come in and they present, you know, they'll come in and say, we're going to build these apartments and here's what they're going to look like and they're fantastic and market, and they'll show us all these pictures and we get sold on the picture, and then, you know, you drive by and it's not what we were told.
Yeah, no, and I understand that, and you obviously have to make that decision on behalf of the city. So it's going to be that no matter who else is behind me talking or who's in front of me or who else is going for this property, you're going to face that with all of us. The one thing that I can say is this, is I don't have any interest in competing with the other businesses that are here. And you already have the Doghouse, and you already have Mutt's. So I'm not really interested in competing with them, or the Coffee Cup. And I love those places. I eat there. They're great. But I'm not really interested in competing with them. Or Brews and Blues, another one I named earlier. I love that place. But I'm not interested in competing with them. I really want to do something that's quite different. And that's why I want to bring in, you know, some of my chef friends to consult on the menus. I feel like, I mean, obviously to commit to a menu right this second is a little preemptive. But I do promise that the foods that we bring will be elevated and will be a little bit different than what you have here in town. I would ideally like to bring in a Latin flair, because South Florida, you know, a lot of tropical foods. Maybe Mike Moyer's Food Shack. You don't have a real great fish house here. That would be awesome to have some fish on the menu. Like I'm all about that. That's fantastic. There's nowhere to get a nice piece of fish in town. Well, Fish House. I don't want to step on their toes. But I also don't want to compete with the catfish. You know, that's not what we're doing either. So, but like somewhere you can go and have like you know, a nice blackened piece of wahoo, or you know, that would be awesome. I'd love to have that stuff on the menu. You're speaking my language. I really would love to do that, but like I said, it's got to sell. So it's just tough to say we're going to have that on the menu and we're just going to throw it all away every week if it doesn't sell. That's a hard commitment to swallow. So, but yes, ideally we would have this amazing elevated menu as well.
Mr. Mazares.
And I just want to remind the CRA board, you're really getting down into the weeds of what ultimately will be negotiated into some sort of contract. So as you listen to the rest of the presenters on this, all the things you're talking about are great to get a feel for the prospective buyer, but in terms of what we come away with tonight will be the ability to negotiate, bring back a written contract that has potentially a reverter clause and other requirements related to what the ultimate use is. I agree with Councilwoman Matheny or Board Member Matheny that you do not, I would caution you against getting into too much detail as to what happens inside the walls and what type of operation it is, as long as it meets the general use that you're looking for, either restaurant, bar, entertainment, something like that.
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you for your presentation. I'm just looking for a business that's going to draw traffic downtown and help contribute to the growth of downtown and not just be a storefront that just does business. And so I like what I've heard thus far, and thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely, and it would be my pleasure to do that. I want to be important to downtown as they would be to me.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Do we have someone here with American-made beverages?
No, we, pardon me. No, we do not. He was unable to attend tonight.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I just may, one
Yes.
quick comment on it. As you know, the three potential offers you have are 2 sales and 1 leaseback. Obviously, you're going to have the most control over the end of the use if you do if it's a leaseback with in other words, if the CRA still owns the building. That's when you're going to have the most control over what happens inside the building and your ability to continue to move forward with it.
Thank you. Is there someone here for the Parsons Group?
How's it going?
Your name?
My name is Zach Parsons. I live at 7021 Five Oaks Drive out in Harmony. And I'm here representing the Parsons Group. We've done, most of our history, y'all may be aware of, is in the city of Kissimmee. Probably our first experiment in the restaurant business is Three Sisters Speakeasy. We opened that just as the economy was collapsing, so it's been a long journey, but it's doing very well. But it's a really good example of where our skill set is. Because originally Three Sisters was, or at least the site of it, was kind of a ghost town. You know, we had Miss Max, if y'all are familiar with it, Robinson's, Joni's, you know. So anytime after lunchtime or once business closed, the place was really quiet. And Three Sisters, we wanted to make a staple nightlife location. And so we started with that, and we expanded to where, if y'all are familiar with that specific business, we expanded into sushi in the space next door, and then into the martini bar, the space next door to that. And over all these years, not just with Three Sisters, but with Abracadabra ice cream, and now now it's known as Breeze, and Shipwrecked on the Islands, is we take a building and try to find the most complementary and try to find basically the best parts of a building and shape that into where we think the opportunity is. And it's a pretty vague statement to say, but you have to look at them to kind of see where they started and where they are now. Like Chimera Radiator is now an ice cream shop, and that's, you know, it's a pretty long journey just to get from one end to the other. And so when we saw this building here, you know, it really fit into that comfort zone for us on where to find opportunity and how to build a winner out of that space. So we're ready to move forward with it. We really like the property, and I'm here to just answer all the questions y'all may have.
Mr. Loading?
I'm just going to ask you the same questions as
Okay.
the previous gentleman. After the closing, what is your projected, like I say, I can't hold you to it or anything, just what's your projected, what do you think it takes to get that building up to speed and get a business
Well,
open?
that is a tricky question.
It
Because,
is,
you know,
but-
it's a can of worms. You know, you don't quite know where you are until you open that can. I estimate, or my goal would be somewhere between, I would say 6 months to 9 months. But that's starting with like just getting the bones right, getting the roof in order, getting the plumbing in order, electrical work, and then we know where we stand. But then, you know, the fine tuning can take just as long.
Yeah, I was going to say 6 to 9 months sounds very aggressive to me.
It's,
I don't know, but
well, it just depends. It depends on what we find. You know, a year's realistic too, but any project we've done hasn't gone beyond 9 months. So that's just kind of my basis.
okay, going to the same questions. Your restaurant experience. I know you mentioned Three Sisters. I mean, I just want to know what your experience is in the restaurant business. Is it more than that or less than that, or you're not involved in that, or, I mean?
Well, essentially, you know, Three Sisters is the beginning of our experience, and that was probably the biggest learning curve for us, you know, just navigating through how staffing can evolve and a menu can evolve, and you know, consumption costs, all that kind of stuff. Three Sisters would probably be the biggest project we've had, but it's, if y'all are familiar with the other properties, you know, we've done kind of all sizes. But Three Sisters, I think its square footage was around, I think it's about 3,600 square feet. So that was my biggest concern with this building is, you know, it's about 4,800 square feet. But it's laid out in a way that the size may not be as daunting of a task as one may think, because it's got the rear, you know, the rear building, and it's got the front building. So, you know, similar to Three Sisters, if you've been there like in the weekends versus in the weekdays, you can actually parcel off the building to where maybe the front is open during the weekdays. But then as volume picks up on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, well, then you can expand into the back and
So,
do something creative with
so
that.
when you look at that building there, what do you envision that building? I mean, you know, we talk about, and Chuck had, remember Chuck had mentioned the restaurant and everything. So do you envision it as being a restaurant? Do you, I mean, where, that building, you could, like you say, could basically be split up. But what is your vision of that? Right
Well,
now, I
the
mean, I'm not
anchor-
holding you to that
yeah.
either. I'm just, how you look at the building, what do you see?
Well, food would be the anchor of the whole thing. And even as, if anybody wanted to prioritize drinks or something like that, you need food as a staple, you know, because I think statistically people will order even like 1.5 more drinks if they have a meal with it. So meals are important. And it's got a kitchen, it's got a grease trap, has a lot of good bones in place to serve food easy, you know, or get there easier than just a, you know, an empty space.
You already own or have a liquor license already?
Yes.
Yes.
Do I have one?
Yes, do you, or?
Yes, but you won't necessarily need a liquor license for that location. And that's why food will be important for that location, is because I think the minimum threshold is 4,000 square feet, kind of similar to like,
I think so.
you know, Applebee's or, you know. So it reaches that threshold to where you don't need to have one of those
Yeah.
high dollar liquor licenses.
Okay, I just want to finish my questions here. As far as in management of that type of business, I mean, how many years experience you have?
I guess it'd be 12.
And you've been involved in Kissimmee how long?
12 years.
12 years. And other than the monies for the down payment or the closing, how much liquid capital do you have readily available? I mean, so you have enough available to restore the building and get that business up and running? That's all I'm
Yes.
asking. Okay.
Any idea how much money you're looking to renovation?
It's probably, realistically, it probably falls somewhere between 125 to 180, something like that, for the restoration. And for a finished, move-in ready.
And that time frame.
Property.
What are you looking, time frame you said now?
Anywhere between 5 to 9 months, something like that.
As long as the city would work with you and.
Oh, yeah, there's-
Get the
there's-
permits and whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna have to get somebody that's gonna do the architectural drawings and the repairs or whatever, if you're gonna get into major stuff, or you're just gonna
Right.
do
I've-
surface.
I know some architects, and we can work out something fast.
Okay. Okay, good.
You got an inside track on it?
I've got an inside track on the architecture.
You think? Councilmember Trace?
I see in the LOI a little blurb about 1031 exchange. How close are you guys to the deadline of?
Well, we closed on the property yesterday, so
Okay.
the clock's ticking now.
Is it
That's
45
why
days or 90 days?
45 days to select the property,
Okay.
180 to
180
close.
Okay.
Any other question?
I had one clarification.
Mr. Lodi?
No, it's Mr. Davis.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Davis, I thought.
That's okay. Just in my head here to clarify, though, when you're talking about the genesis of the business, really you're talking about into the 80s down at Fibbers, right?
Well,
I mean, obviously you weren't running it at that point, but
my father Ray's here. He can tell you a lot more about Fair McGee's than I could. But, you know, the shipwreck in the islands
right.
business is now in the old Fair McGee's space. So
So your family's
it's,
background in opening these types of restaurants goes clear. I don't remember what year Fibbers opened, but it had to be the 80s.
it was 80,
84.
yeah, 84.
So, I mean, if everybody, I don't know.
So there's-
I would think most of the members up here remember that.
Right.
Yeah, I know, you're young.
I don't remember it either.
I mean, it's, you know,
I've heard stories.
my memories of Fibbers is honestly just as a child, just looking at the cool stuff on the wall and wishing I could take it down. You know? That's but it was pretty cool working on that building because you know, I had images of what it was and stories of what it was. Probably, you know, a lot of people in the county have a lot of stories of what it used to be.
I don't know any of them.
But it was a cool project to, you know,
Yeah.
I think it sat vacant for
Oh, wow.
probably like 5 years.
Yeah, I went through
And-
several iterations between, quite a few between Fibbers and now.
So it was, you know, it was a fun project.
Do you have a vision of what you're thinking or looking for food to put in?
For food? Food, not specific yet. And the reason is just because we're just at that stage of selecting the building. And, but if you're familiar with Dakin Avenue in Kissimmee, our rule of thumb with that was always to be complementary of each other. So the mentality I would have is to think of what opportunity is out there, you know, what market hasn't been addressed yet, you know, like, and kind of move forward from there. You know, I kind of agree with you guys. We've got plenty of burgers, plenty of pizzas, you know, but where's the opportunity? You know, like at Three Sisters, the only reason we got into sushi was because there wasn't sushi anywhere nearby. So that was one of the driving forces to just get into it. So that I don't have a specific answer for you, but at least a philosophy is to find opportunity and build out the interior based on the opportunity.
Is your vision on this to not just have this restaurant long-term, but to do kind of like you've done over on Dakin, where if it's successful, obviously, and build on that and maybe have like a little bit of a night spot or an entertainment district, or where you have several different?
It's very similar to how we envision Dakin. You know, I really like New York Avenue, and it has a lot of the bones in place already to be able to do stuff like that.
What was the name of the small retail shops that you all did? further north on Main, there was there were houses, but there was a group of them, and then there was several, they're still there.
Oh, talking about the Imagination Station kind
Well,
of
that
thing?
was one of
there?
them, yeah,
That
there
was
were
one of
several
them?
different ones in there.
I can't remember the name of the
But
development.
that was an area where you took historically significant buildings and renovated them, right, as I remember?
Well, there's the most recent one is the ice cream shop. It used to be Chimera Radiator.
Right,
But,
across the street.
but in my professional history, I haven't done anything beyond that on Main Street.
But your family has a background in
Correct.
maintaining historically significant buildings.
Anything else? Any other questions? Thank you
Well,
so much.
Last question. I'm back to the same thing. Mr. Manzares, I guess we could tie that in, we're gonna make sure that it's gonna be a restaurant and it's not gonna be a tire shop.
Right.
And you would sign that it's gonna be a
I don't see any reason why not.
business,
You know,
it's gonna be restaurant.
the assets within the building are already there. You know, the grease trap, that's, you know, that's a high dollar item. The hood system, the
Right.
kitchen, you know, it's too good of an asset to ignore, to not have food.
Dan, you could tie that up then.
Can put something like in the contract with a Roberta clause.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this item? Andre, do you have anything else for us here? I'm sorry, Mr. Davis.
Can we talk about the purchase price just a tiny bit before we get to picking who? Because what I'm seeing is we got 417,000, but that ignores staff time and opportunity cost, which have to be significant. I mean, unless no one else thinks that that matters.
Yeah. It costs.
Which apparently.
It does take time.
Right.
Councilman Trace.
Well, I think you're going to talk a little bit about the process moving forward, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll talk through that, and then we can
Okay.
bring up some of those questions as well.
Okay. Andre?
So the next.
I'm sorry, Matheny.
Sorry, I hit it late.
First, I would like to ask everyone to talk into their microphones.
Sorry.
Mr. Manzares and Joel, you guys, it's kind of hard to hear. But the second thing is I asked that question in my email about the staff costs that I had sent. Do you have any idea on the order of magnitude of staff time that's been put into the building?
Unfortunately, I'm not sure how we calculate staff time on this, because it's kind of part of our routine in the day. I mean, we don't actually log hours and say we worked 10 hours or 2 hours on this particular project. So it was a little difficult. We did capture staff costs when staff was actually working. I mean, like, for instance, the roofing, we had calculated the materials and staff time. But in just daily activities like talking with prospective applicants or whatever, or talking about the RFP process, I mean, several folks were involved, such as the finance director and others. So I'm not sure where we would make that demarcation.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about advertising the property, because that's a cost that would have happened anyways, but if they were overdoing specific things on the building, I mean, if there was a bunch of time over at the building.
You know, we have a designated CRA specialist that's involved, and her salary is from the CRA for that purpose. As far as other staff that may be funded out of the general fund, that, again, that cost is out of that interfund transfer for just those types of things, those routine things. It really comes down to the folks that were physically working on the building, such as the pressure washing or moving the vines. We calculated that because that was staff that did that from like Parks Department. They did, so we calculated what that was.
You have that slide again?
Yes. So, for instance, the roof repair that was done by our internal staff, more revision with that was a consulting company. The removal of the vines, that was internal. I'm not 100% sure about the clean and pressure wash. I think that was external. The porch demolition, that was internal. Electrical work, I think that was our folks as well, the city maintenance folks. So those were.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then, of course, the vacant lot appraisal and survey, that was staff contacting a consultant.
But that wasn't even for this property.
Yeah, it was for the vacant property.
How do you get a staff time of $750 even, roof repair $49.95 even? I'm amazed that you can control your labor costs enough to have it come out to an even dollar amount.
I don't know.
Those are sunk costs. They're on duty. We're paying them an hourly salary. We didn't have to pay any overtime. We did it while they're regular duty time.
But we're
So
con-
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Davis. So we captured it because it's sunk cost. We're already paying their salaries.
But that's ignoring the fact that you're out hiring tons of people constantly because you have too much work for the people to hear. So you still got, I mean, you're gonna have to somehow come up with a figure for their time.
Isn't that what the $750 is?
But how'd you come up with
I
$750?
mean, I think whenever we've done these in the past, and we've done some of these for certain matters that we've been involved in, the city attorney, the city tries to calculate an acceptable hourly rate, and they figure out how many hours on it. It's not an exact number, it's basically a good estimate as to the cost.
So it's just rounded up, rounded down?
I don't know, but, I mean, it's not, you're not gonna, the city, like Mr. Sturgeon's pointing out, we don't keep timesheets like like a private entity would do, where they're writing a check based on a per-project basis.
So we have no idea whether the $49.95 is relevant is even close.
I think, well.
Our finance
Randy
director would
can
like to
answer the
speak to that.
question.
And really, honestly, that wasn't even the labor cost I was wanting. The ones I want to know if we had included was management type time, that we haven't allocated anything in for that.
Ms. Clausen.
Or opportunity cost on the money that the city's had invested.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Fantastic question. Wendy Colazzo, Finance Director. So the standard mathematics that goes into this is the actual labor that happened, the materials that happen into a roof repair, which is why you're seeing zeros. It's a straight cost. But standard practice is we take indirect cost and direct cost, multiply it by 100, and we get an overhead management cost, because we can't say, Mr. Sturgeon touches everything here, so how do we sprinkle him? So we sprinkle him off of percentage. We do the allocations at the end of the month with a 20% allocation of indirect costs towards the entire organization by fund. And that happens through transfers and things of that nature.
Okay, so that gets us closer to where I'd like to see us being. That's fine.
Yes, sir.
So take the 750. That's easier.
So the removal.
Back down through the numbers to get to that, you used to get to, just approximately. I know you don't have the numbers in front of you, but
So what we would do is the removal of vines, the actual material time of it, we'd add 20% of staff, including Mr. Anderson, Mr. Sturgeon, and we sprinkle that on top to the 750. It's ballparked in a cost allocation when we do that with machinery and things of that nature, like a fixed asset. How much cost did it take for our IT to install the laptop into this issue? So same thing, the removal of the vines, 750. We don't really have a straight methodology, so they may have rounded it up. But we can look into that, and it always has a sprinkle and spread over the entire management staff.
so the 750 though includes the hourly laborers that did that job.
Yes, sir. A percentage
then
of
you-
it. A percentage of it. So we have direct
Well, if
costs.
they had 10 hours on that job, what
They have
percentage of 10 hours would you have used?
We would have used 20% of it, because we can only do 22% by state statute of work internally, so we use that methodology.
So 78% of all the labor that the city performed internally on this is not included in this price.
I haven't vetted all the numbers here fully to answer that question. Let's say yes right now, but I can verify that for you. We can do the quick math, but we got every line item in there. So if it's not allocated to the straight removal of vines, we still allocate labor regardless to install or remove or do work in anything we do. We got to capture best scenario, because if not, we'd be sitting there classifying every single person. I'm sure you understand that.
Sure.
Yes, sir. So what we could do is also give you a better methodology and the math and how to equate. It's not very standard to get 750 even numbers like that. I agree with you.
Well, every one of them, except the outside work. Well, maybe porch demolition.
With those, like I said, I could vet them, and maybe they do just have the roof repair cost itself, but we do still need to do the allocation, because I don't know if these numbers were pulled exactly when quarter end, month end, so we may have not done the allocation just yet, because we do adjust those costs.
Okay. And opportunity cost on the money?
Pardon?
Opportunity cost on the money that the city's had invested in this?
I don't have an answer for that at this point, to tell you the truth, because,
Obviously, you have to borrow money to run the city.
oh, yeah.
So the money that's invested in here has a cost.
It was sitting in the CRA fund, though. It's
Yeah.
not like we had applicants for some of those incentives that were moved into, right?
Yeah, that might actually be true in this case.
Yeah, because the CRA money
So
has to sit in
the
that
CRA
fund.
has
It's
to-
not.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
might be true in this particular case. Okay.
Mr.
Thank you.
Cooper?
Thank you.
The money goes
Question real
back in
quick
the
on
fund.
the roof repairs.
It has to go back in the CRA.
Andre, could you tell me or somebody? These roof repairs, are they just asphalt repairs and only patches?
Unfortunately, I cannot speak to that. I didn't realize we were going to go into that level of detail. I apologize. I think the building official will be probably the better person to answer that question. But my understanding was they had surplus roofing material that they were able to utilize on this job, and it was done by staff from the
Well, there's
maintenance.
asphalt and there's rubberoids, so,
Yeah, I
you know,
don't
which
know.
one did you use? And
I don't know the specifics
if
of
it's
what
just
was
a
done.
small patch that you've done, you know, $4,900. Excuse me, $4,900. How much did we do?
Well, the entire thing covered with rubberoid, so the entire surface.
Sir,
Mayor.
sir, you need to come to the microphone. I'll certainly give you the opportunity to speak if you'll come to the
Again, you're
microphone.
asking, this was a staff work that was done, and I guess, I understand this gentleman might have some information, but I'm not sure you're asking the right person.
No, you're not, clearly,
gonna
but,
listen.
but I actually did ask all those questions of Mr. Deathridge, so he did explain that to me, that the entire surface of that roof was covered in rubberoid, so it has been completely covered in a thin layer of rubberoid. It probably won't last more than 5 or 10 years realistically, but it is completely sealed and there's no
It's
leakage
rubberoid,
inside of
it'll
it.
last
So
longer than that.
most likely, as long as nothing's fallen on it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, sir.
So what I can tell you is that if the CRA sells it, we're selling it as is.
I understand that, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Not going to give 20 years warranty.
At least 2 of the LOIs I recall indicated as is.
And that's the one,
One did, I know.
one of the bids
At
says
least
that.
one did,
Well,
yeah.
the lease option offer is probably wouldn't
Right,
be as is.
that's right. As landlord, yeah. Sure. All right.
So the next part of the presentation is to talk about the RFP process, so you can understand that as well before you make a decision on how to proceed. So we had conversations with the procurement director to outline a schedule, a timeframe that was somewhat expedited. And so our proposed timeline, if we were to go through the RFP process, is for a 30-day window to receive responses and issue the RFP, then 7-day committee review, though with our staff review, and then up to 14 days for interviews, depending on how quickly we can schedule them, and then 7 days for a reference checks on the responders, and then up to 30 days to then bring it back to the CRA for a meeting. All total, it could be up to 90 days before we have a finalist that the council can decide on. And given that length of time, staff would recommend Accomplice because they have the shortest time frame to close on the property, and that of 75 days. So you can have a sale in 75 days, or you can have an offer to begin discussions in 90 days, at least 90 days. So that's where we are on that. And then if I may, go to the next item, which was something that was brought up by Member Cooper, that he was concerned that we should repair the glass on the building prior to even offering for sale. And so we did get an estimate of approximately $4,000 to replace all the cracked glass, which is plate glass to tempered glass to meet the building code requirements. So depending on what decision you make here now or direction, we will proceed, whether it's to select one of the LOIs, to go through the RFP process, and whether or not you want us to proceed with repairing the glass.
If I can jump in there, one of those
Mr.
was already
Davis.
replaced. I noticed your bid is for 4 panels.
No, it's not. It's for all panels.
Okay, either way, one of them was replaced. I put a tempered, one of those panels, I replaced it with tempered glass.
Okay,
I
well
don't remember
then.
how many years ago, but one of them shouldn't need replaced, is my point.
Okay, well, we will definitely look and determine which one it is.
Yeah,
And not replace that one if that's the
I
direction.
can, I think I remember which one it is.
Okay.
So that'll save a little bit.
I thought when I talked to Mr. Sturgeon, I thought we were talking about that glass was gonna be borne to the buyers.
Well, again, the point is, if we decide to move the LOI, then we will not replace the glass. It will be
Right.
borne by the purchaser.
Okay.
But if you want us to do it prior to, then that's what we need direction on, because that's what was asked of us last.
It is what it
CRA
is.
meeting.
Kinda is what it is. Okay. Thanks,
Do we
sir.
have any other discussion?
So we need direction.
Yes, you do. Mr. Davis.
I'll make a motion that we begin negotiations for letter of intent with the Parsons Group. Nothing against the first man. He has a great vision. I would love to see him in town and see him get that. This particular one, I think the city needs to get done fairly quickly. And with the Parsons experience in the county, all over in Kissimmee, but still, I just feel more comfortable going with them, and the same purchase price, basically. The 15 days difference is meaningless to me because it's no more than 90 days. Parsons could still end up closing in the same 75 days. I'm more comfortable with their experience.
I'd
Second.
second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Davis, a second from Cooper. Do we have any additional discussion?
I wanted to say.
Ms. Matheny?
I also wanted to echo Mr. Davis's sentiments. I liked the vision that Accomplice brought up, and I'm super excited about the wine bar. I've been wanting one of those for many, many years. I'm stoked. So I'm hoping that maybe you can find another building in our downtown
For
that
sure.
would be amenable to you. I also agree. I think this one's more kind of like restaurant centric for me. But I love cider. I was super excited about your cider stuff. I hope you can find some other fit for you. But I agree with what Mr. Davis said about the Parson family.
Mr. Trace?
I'll just echo those comments too. Maybe that back portion, instead of being an expansion place, that could still be the brewery part of it, to help out. A lot of the businesses that are brewing in downtown, they don't really have the space in their building for it. They have to almost do it on nights or some other time, especially fire. I don't know how they fit all that in there, but it might be nice to have a place that everyone can kind of brew their stuff in the same spot.
Mr. Mazares?
And I just want to ask the board, your next meeting is in April? So do you want to meet between now and April? Because the plan would be, if this motion passes, would be to go back and negotiate a contract and bring a contract back in front of this board. So I just need some direction.
I would want
Sure.
to. I wouldn't want to wait till April,
Yeah.
for anybody's sake.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
I mean, we can just put it in front of a council meeting or
All right,
something.
well, we'll work and try to schedule so we
Yeah,
can get a
I'd say put it in
special
front of
meeting.
council
Put it
We'll
in
get a
front of
special
council
meeting set.
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Fine.
thank you. Assuming your motion passes.
Mr. Stern, you have something?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do we have a motion with a second? Any other discussion? You call the roll, please.
Member Loading?
Aye.
Member Davis?
Aye.
Member Cooper?
Aye.
Member Trace?
Aye.
Vice Chair Matheny?
Aye.
Chair Blackwell?
Aye. And it carries.
Yes, sir.
Can we add
so-
some kind of reverter
Well, we
in there that
understood where the direction,
Okay.
so we can address that when it comes back and then when we negotiate, but we'll
Great.
bring back a final version, but we'll do it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We need to move to new business. We have a St. Cloud Main Street report.
We have to make a quick switch, Mayor, to the laptop.
Good evening. We're having a little technical differences, so we're trying to get it together. Paula Stark, Executive Director of St. Cloud Main Street. I hope I don't cough too much at you guys tonight. Okay. So every year we come before you to kind of give you an update on our report card and what we're doing and our plans for the future. So we wanted to do that for you this evening. Most of you have been in some of the presentations we do throughout the year, so you know some of the parts and pieces. You also are pretty familiar right now with what we do. So obviously, we are a program that comes down from the National Historic Preservation Bureau all the way to the state level underneath the historic resources on the state. We have a state coordinator we answer to, and we have meetings that we are required to attend. So we have a mission statement and a vision statement. I won't bore you to death to read those to you, but they are right there for your purview. And mostly, the most important thing is our mission is economic development with historic preservation as the goal and the tool that we utilize to do that. Some of you have seen and maybe even been in our meeting in August where we did our annual meeting for our 20th anniversary. So there we announced that we won 3 awards at the state level this year, and these are the pictures where we accepted those awards on behalf of the city. We also were recognized at that particular time for being a 20-year anniversary Main Street program. Our 3 awards we accepted on behalf of the City of St. Cloud, your New York Avenue renovation project. We were the Main Street Project of the Year for that. We also won for signage and display projects for our mural that we did on the side of Blues and Brews, which was kind of an entry welcoming mural into the downtown area. And last but not least, we also won for Brews and Blues for Business of the Year. With those particular awards this year, that brought us to a total of 56 awards over the inception of your Main Street program. One of the things that we wanted to update you on is this is our current footprint from Florida to Massachusetts, 13th Street to Lake Shore. We are right now, as a matter of fact, I have the paperwork to submit to the state. We will be expanding the footprint along 10th Street from west Wisconsin Avenue, and the east is Virginia Avenue. And then again, that area on the lakefront between those streets. So it will look kind of like an I. So there's going to be an I in Main Street for you and coming soon. The way we function all the way down from national to the state level is the 4-point approach, and that's by 4 major committees: promotions, economic restructuring, design, and organization. And we'll talk a little bit about what each one does. Promotions pretty much covers your events. These are the events that we do throughout the year. We have 7 breakfasts with the pros. Those are the ones that we bring in speakers for various topics, whether it's just to inform the community on some things that are going on behalf of the city and our Main Street. And sometimes there are training educational programs where we'll bring someone in for marketing training or window display training for our businesses to help them be more successful. We also do the Redneck Gala annually, the Soldier City's Veteran Salute Dinner, which has become kind of our signature event, and we really appreciate the city helping us with that because it has gone way beyond what we ever imagined, and we're really proud of that event. We do Smokin' Blues, Cruise, and Barbecue. That's coming up May 2nd. Then we do 4 Historics, and we also do Small Business Saturday. Those particular events this year, we were able to bring $14,000 of grant dollars into our community to help promote those. In addition to that, we have our webpage that gets over 20,000 visitors monthly. We also have a Facebook page with over 9,400 followers, and we are able to get our message out with those on a regular basis. With that, we also have an app called Districts where we promote our events there, and any of the activities, including the city's activities, we put on there. We have our walking tour for the murals, and we hope to put our markers on there pretty soon. So we work on that, and you can download that anytime you go into a Main Street area in the nation. You are notified that you are in a Main Street district, and you can get their information at that particular point in time. The Promotions Committee also looks over all of the things that we promote out of all the projects from our other committees. So when you see us do things in the Design Committee, like our City Flower, the City Bird, those things that committee also promotes. We've done rat cards that we handed out this year for the Sandhill Cranes to inform people about our cranes and how to protect them and the things to do and resource numbers to call. We also started this year Christmas ornaments for the amaryllis flowers by our local artist, Jules Ross. So she does those for us. We're going to add the crane into this year. Additionally, we have economic restructuring brochures. We put out a newsletter called The Bugler, and then the last thing was we do the engraved bricks that are in the Veterans Reflection Garden right behind the St. Cloud substation for anyone who wants to put something for a local veteran in the park. Then we have economic restructuring, and that's where we really focus on historic preservation. One of the things that we do is the National Registry. You all are aware that we now only have 2 buildings that are on the National Registry. One is the GAR building. The other now is the VFW train station. And we are working with the Women's Club currently to apply for the Veterans Memorial Library, the Heritage Museum, to be on the registry. Hopefully, we're hoping by May we will know that, because we're putting a tour together with multiples of the historic preservation pieces where people will be able to watch for the unveilings of multiple locations, markers, murals, and hopefully the National Registry. Along with the registry, we have business assistance grants under economic restructuring. We offer 5 $1,000 grants each year to 5 businesses. It doesn't necessarily have to be 1,000, but we will do up to 1,000 matching grants. And then in addition to that, last year we worked with the Economic Development Department of the city, and we put a local bank CRA breakfast together so that we could educate people on what the needs are and talk about projects between the CRA directors on the banking end and our staff in the city of St. Cloud. The design committee is kind of the pretty committee. They like to do all the fun little things. That's where you get your things for the amaryllis and for the Sandhill Cranes. We do coloring pages for all of our pieces, including historic buildings, so that's kind of fun and educational for our youth when we're out and about in places. And we just promote those other things. In addition to that, that's where we do the marker applications. So we currently have 6 markers that have been approved. We unveiled Hunter Arms this past May. Some of you were in that attendance. I just this week submitted the one for the Fisk Funeral Home. So hopefully in March we will know whether or not that one has been approved, and we would hope that we get to unveil it in May, but it may be a little iffy to get it manufactured that quickly. And then we're working on other ones that we will move forward from there. The design committee also covers other things, all the murals that you see downtown. They're currently is 16. We will be doing a 17th on the Handyman Building. Hopefully that will be finished by May. We just put out a call to artists for that one. We also have all the other murals downtown that we are working towards doing some renovations on because they've been there for a while. Some of the materials cracking, the paint is fading, so we are working on that. We will be updating the Joyland Beach one that's on the side of the Williams Building, which is right on the corner of 10th and Pennsylvania. So that's coming soon. In addition to that, we work on the walking brochure. We help with the planters, benches, and so forth. If you didn't know, this year we took those for you, and we are having those rehabbed. And that is a great savings to the city, and those particular benches and planters and so forth will go on Pennsylvania Avenue. So that's a complement to the New York Avenue side. So those are all of the parts and pieces. We work with several organizations. The Rotary of St. Cloud has stepped up, and we're moving on. Organization committee, that's kind of our outreach committee. That's your membership, your patrons. Our grants fall underneath there, and our volunteers. They're the ones who put the breakfast with the pros together and the speakers and who's going to be coming in. And then our annual meeting that is held usually in August will be in September this year. We recognize all of the people who have done extraordinary things in our community. So we give out awards there. We also recognize the ones who went on the state level at that particular meeting. And it's just kind of an update for our community as to what things have been done on behalf of them through the Main Street program. One of the things that's coming up pretty quickly at the end of February, it's called Main Street America. That's the logo that you see in the middle. That is a contest that's put on a state, on a national level. And so we will be putting a campaign together, and we're hoping that at the time we do that, we will send all the information to the city and other groups to help us promote that. Because if you get selected, at the ultimate end game, if you get selected, you win $25,000. So, and it's all a social media campaign. So we have to kind of really get the word out there in the beginning, and then toward the end, they make a final decision from like the top 5 that get the most votes. Our executive committee, they're the operational arm of Main Street, obviously. They oversee me, finances, and the budget, and all of the other committees, by and large. They're kind of like the direction of, how to move forward with the staff. We also have to be evaluated every year through the state program, and that is part of what they do. I think that's the next drop. There you go. And we just recently went through the written portion of that, and then ultimately we also have to do a conference call evaluation. And our board president, Rick Hauser, this year, and myself sit on that conference call with the state. We go through the evaluation. They make recommendations, or they tell us what we're doing great or whatever. And so I am happy to say, as of last week, we are fully accredited once again. Some of the things that gets lost a little bit in the shuffle is over time, if you haven't really been around the same amount of time as Main Street, you don't know some of the things they've been involved in the past. So we put a few things down just for historical reference, that in 2005, your Main Street program is who initiated your CRA initiative. And so we like to say that we took the arrows for you all, so you didn't have to take the political hit. So that's how you got a CRA ultimately established. Then, of course, you all know that we brought forward the historic ordinance and worked with staff to finalize that, to bring it forward so that you have an ordinance in place, a historic district, ultimately Historic Preservation Board, which in turn laid the groundwork for you to be able to become a CLG, which staff applied and you were awarded in August. And then that opens up a whole lot of other opportunities for us as a city. Additionally, this year, I announced previously for you all that we wrote a grant with staff underneath Main Street umbrella, because as a Main Street program, you can get small matching grants up to $50,000 from the state to do different projects. So on your behalf, we wrote that grant, and we are in the middle of doing that now. That saved the city $25,000 in matching funds to be able to get that. So we're updating your inventory for the historic district, which will help move some other things forward, and hopefully it will lend itself to us being able to become a national registry district. That is our ultimate goal, is our whole district to be on the national registry, and the state has already assessed that that is a possibility. So we will be working toward that. So with some of the things I've mentioned to you today, the grant money coming in for marketing, the markers, some of the other funding, the $25,000 for your grant match, the benches and so forth that are being refurbed, all of that is a hard cash savings and or benefit to the city and our Main Street program of $90,000. This page is our value statement. We break it down into the various categories. I won't go over them individually because, frankly, it's numbers and it's boring, but you can see here what all of those items represent as it relates to the numbers that they add up to over the years. This is your 20-year picture. The bottom line is $5,051,575.63 is the value that has been brought to your downtown district through your Main Street program, and that equates to a little bit over 17% return on your dollar that you have given to the program since its inception. And of course, there you also see our board of directors in case you ever wanted to reach out to any of them. You know who's involved. And these are some of the items that we have on our agenda. A couple of them I mentioned. But some things that are coming up, the Rotary approached us, and we are doing the restorations with them for some of the murals and a new mural. Also, we were applying for another matching grant for the United Arts to do a mural on the Oddfellows building. We will be updating the new walking tour brochure, and that is also the brochure that we put out up and down the turnpike and in the tourist areas in Central Florida. And we actually do get a lot of direct feedback from that where people actually see them, and it's kind of funny sometimes because with technology, people will just send me things and go, oh, I saw this, and they'll be up in North Florida somewhere. I'm like, okay. So those kind of things do work for you. The program expansion project, which I mentioned previously, we're getting ready to submit to the state. On March 6th, we hope you put this on your calendar. You actually should have gotten an invitation already. We will be doing our Opportunity Zone breakfast. It is at the Marina Building. You all are supporting that as a sponsor, where we will be bringing investors into our Opportunity Zone, especially on the east side, because if you weren't aware, that particular Opportunity Zone encompasses your Main Street program, your historic district, your CRA. So there's multiple stories to tell in that particular area, and we want to make sure to educate some of the proper people in our community and maybe outside of the community who would be interested in doing some of the projects, and they're talking about the benefits of doing that. We will have an attorney who is an expert in opportunity zones come in and talk about the viabilities of that and how that all works for them. And Veronica Miller will be speaking for us, too, because she'll be helping us lay out the land as it relates to St. Cloud and all of those parts and pieces that will affect someone in that particular area. Then, of course, we just recently had a subcommittee on the power plant, which I know is like fresh on your agenda. So we did a lot of background work, and we talked with staff, and you all did get a basic report from us so that you would know the position that Main Street took on that particular building. The state historic markers are in progress, as I mentioned, and of course, you probably should have, if not most of them, all of the furniture from New York Avenue to be able to have it refurbished and put out later. And then the last slide just tells you, this is our puzzle. We like to go by, you are an essential piece of our puzzle, and these are all of the partners that we see in our community that we try to stay connected with to make sure that they know that we value their participation in our program. And with that, if you have any questions, I will try to answer them.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you and all the members of Main Street for the incredible job that you do, and thank you so much for all your hard work and time that you've invested, and we thank all of you. Councilmember Trace.
As a involuntary volunteer for 2 years, when my wife was the Main Street director, and you know this, a lot of work goes into everything that you guys do. You, in 10 minutes, summed up a whole lot of hours of you, your board, your staff, your volunteers, of everything that goes in. You guys are doing a great job. Great events, collateral. You guys make the city look good. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Agree.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate your partnership, and you all are very supportive of us, so we can't do that without each other, so it's really a great thing.
Keep on going.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We appreciate you. Next item on the agenda is the Kisselback property.
So we have a great opportunity for, and a unique opportunity that I would like for the CRA board to consider, and it is for some Kisselback property. Kisselback Ford is relocating, excuse me, is relocating from their current site at New York and Kentucky and Pennsylvania to another site east of this downtown by Nora Tyson Road and 192. They had the courtesy of at least coming to us first because they realized that this intersection is important to the city of St. Cloud and wanted to offer us the opportunity to purchase this property as part of our downtown master plan, and decided that they would do that before putting it on the market for the general public. Mr. Kisselback, I think his realtor is here, so he'll be able to answer questions if you have more specifics. But he's currently made an offer on the other property that he's wishing to purchase, and is currently in the due diligence process, and so he would like to get an answer from the CRA as to how he will be able to proceed, if with the city or with someone else. The property has a total of 5.41 acres. It includes 5 parcels, the used car lot, which is at Kentucky and 13th Street, and those are 2 parcels. The service center, which is at New York and 13th. The new car lot, which is on Pennsylvania and 13th, and an overflow parking, which is on the south side at Florida and 13th. As I said before, this is a unique opportunity. It comes around maybe once in a lifetime. I don't think we'll have an opportunity this good to be able to implement what's identified in our CRA master plan. And of note, this is a location that encompasses 3 major roadways that go into our downtown, New York, Pennsylvania, and Florida. It would give us the opportunity to redevelop the parcel in a fashion consistent with the plan. It would implement the Envision St. Cloud plan, and it would also implement the CRA master plan, which has several provisions for addressing redevelopment in the downtown. And also, it is within an opportunity zone, so in that instance, it would be lucrative and advantageous to an investor wanting to develop the property. As I said, it is consistent with the CRA master plan. I just want to highlight for you a few things in our master plan that makes this consistent. One of our goals is to establish a business development and retention strategy to promote and enhance overall business and economic vitality in the CRA. And item 2 specifically talks about pursue a public-private development or redevelopment opportunity as a major project in the CRA to build interest, increase revenues, and create additional business activity. Also, goals F in our projects list talks about develop 13th Street between Florida and Kentucky as an extension of the downtown character. And item 1 in that goal talks about developing land development strategy to include pursuing a public-private development or redevelopment opportunity as a major investment. And then goal G talks about reinforcing the downtown land use with additional mixed use housing, retail, and cultural civic uses. And item 4 of that goal talks about encourage a diversity of urban housing alternatives, including multifamily live work, senior loft, townhome, or for sale condominium and rental to serve a range of needs and family sizes in the downtown. And then finally, J talks about establishing a coordinated signage and streetscape program to capture passerby trips that would otherwise be lost without some sort of designation at that location. So this gives opportunity to control the signage, to control the location to downtown, and to control the uses that could ultimately occur on those parcels. This is a rendering that was in the original CRA master plan. It's just an image, it's just a concept. It's not exactly what may happen there. However, it gives the intention of creating this urban footprint that's walkable, that allows for wide plaza areas for folks to use, and be a place that one would recognize as an important place leading into the downtown. As far as the Envision St. Cloud Master Plan goes, it also recognized the importance of New York and that area, and you may not be able to read what's on the screen, but I'll read it for you. It enables a fundamental restructuring of development on 13th Street at New York Avenue. The front door to downtown should transition away from highway-oriented commercial to a more mixed-use street front environment. So this opportunity, I think, will give us that chance to do just that. This is a concept that we put together to give an indication of what could occur if we were to have control of the Kesselbach property holdings. It is not final, it is a concept for discussion purposes. And the reason why we do not show New York as the main entrance in the downtown is because we do not control the west parcel, the parcel that's on the west side of New York. So we showed Pennsylvania as the primary point, which of course does not prevent someone from using New York to go into downtown because it's a lighted intersection. However, if we were able to control the portion to the west of New York, we would easily revise the plan to then make New York the primary entrance gateway into the downtown. So going through the plan, what we have is an opportunity for a mixed-use concept that would be under the CRA's control and can be adjusted as needed. As I said, it would activate the downtown and would extend downtown usage time from anywhere from 8 to 16 hours per day, rather than just be closed, a few hours after working hours. It would also be a walkable, pedestrian-friendly concept. The proposed development program, I'll go through real quickly with you. What's being proposed in this concept is buildings A, B, which is on the New York to Pennsylvania block on the north, and C are retail, ground floor retail, with the opportunity for other uses on the upper floors, such as housing or apartment living. And then building D and E and F, which is on the south block, would also accommodate ground floor retail and apartment living on the top. What's also proposed is a parking structure, a 4-level parking structure, to provide additional parking in the downtown. Altogether, the proposed plan is for 68,000 square feet of ground floor retail and approximately 230 downtown urban living residential units. And these would directly support the downtown activities and be able to provide activation of the downtown corridor. There's also proposed in this plan 480 space parking structure and 73 on-street parking spaces and 41 space surface lot. And the surface lot is important, and that will be on the south portion adjacent to Veterans Park. Our park recreation director has been challenged with hosting events at Veterans Park due to limited parking. This would give her the opportunity to expand her programming for that park, as they would have available parking adjacent to Veterans Park. So all total, we will have approximately 594 parking spaces available in the downtown area as part of this development. The next couple slides I'd like to show you are just examples of architecture style that could be applied to this concept. And this example is from Winter Park on New England. And it is a multi-story building that has white marble and bricks that would be in keeping with the style of the city of St. Cloud. Again, this is not definitive, but this is an idea of what it could be if we were to entertain a design such as this. And then right behind it is an example of a parking structure that would also mirror and blend with the architectural style of the main building. And as you see down that road is a corridor that allows you to cross from the parking lot into the main building. So if you can imagine that this corridor would be Pennsylvania. Oh, I forget to mention one thing. So there was another item that I didn't talk about, I apologize, and that is the pedestrian bridge, the Gateway Pedestrian Bridge that crosses 192. It goes from building E to building D, I'm F, I think. And it is a very efficient design because it doesn't require ramps. It's actually going from in an elevator to the level and then cross over and then go down in an elevator to get to the other side. So we thought that was an efficient design that would minimize and not use a lot of land for ramps. So with that, let me go back to where I was. This you have already seen. I had presented this to you back in, I think, 2018 and in December. And this was at the time that we were looking to purchase 980 New York, and the point of these slides was to talk about the type of investment that we'd make and the fact what kind of economic impact it would generate and the long-term economic impact. And these were just examples of successful renovation projects that were done in different CRAs. This is in the Arts Warehouse, and then this is the Port Harbor Marina, excuse me, and then this is the City of Pompano Bailey Contemporary Arts. And there was always a significant increase in the taxable value of the properties once the redevelopment was completed. This slide shows the property holdings of Kisselback and the appraised value that we received, that we were told by the seller. This is the appraisal that he has, and also represents the offer amount that he is asking for the sale of all the properties. He's also amenable to breaking it up and not selling it as a unit. So if we didn't want to purchase one particular property, we would not be obligated to do so. The last column to the right represents the Osceola County property appraisers appraised taxable value of the property. Essentially, this is based on the type of annual revenues that we would receive. And given the values that are listed there, the annual taxable revenues for this site is $13,430. This was a question that was raised, and so we want to provide that information to you so you understand what would occur. Part of the proposal for this property is that if we were to proceed with negotiating a contract to purchase this property, one of the provisions would be a lease back, because Mr. Kisselback would need the time to build the new facility at Nora Tyson and then be able to move his operation to that new location. So I think that's it. Yes, that's it. So at this point, we just need some direction on whether we should begin discussions with Mr. Kisselback to purchase the property. And as I said, the seller is here as well, the realtor.
The city manager just hit his button. Can we hear what he was going to say first?
Actually, I'll defer to you, Deputy Mayor. I was going to read something into the record for Mr. Askew, so I'll let you speak.
Okay. So I have some thoughts on this, and I'm kind of interested to hear the discussion
for this today. But first of all, thank you for bringing this to us and putting the plan together. I know that all takes a lot of work, and for me, this is a bigger project than I feel comfortable us, taking a bite of. I just have Stevens Plantation in my mind every time we go to do something like this. It's like the best laid plans, and that's a lot of money for our city. A couple thoughts I had, which might be moot, but the pedestrian bridge doesn't look like very functional to me. I know I sit in a lot of classes about pedestrian safety and Florida being the worst for pedestrian and bicycle safety. But, it has to be in a place that people will actually use it, and it has to be convenient. I'm not really sure anybody would actually use that, I've watched all kinds of slides and videos and stuff of everybody walking around pedestrian bridges because it just takes extra time to get up and over there. Like maybe a more sensible place for me for a pedestrian bridge would be like at Neptune Brown Chapel 192, because that has a big trail system that feeds people to that intersection more than this. But that's kind of
If I may, we actually, in Envision, we do have a concept for a pedestrian bridge that would go over 192 as well by Budinger.
Okay.
Was it Budinger? Yeah. No. Yes, Budinger.
Yes.
Yeah, I just feel like you have that major trail system
Sure.
coming, that's what feeds people to it, and I don't know. I'm guilty of it. If I can just cross on the land, I'll cross on the land versus going up and over. But another thing I wanted to ask, which maybe is off topic for the CRA, but I feel like I've mentioned it, but then when I talk with staff, maybe I just haven't said it publicly. But why not put a parking garage or pursue a parking garage with the church on 10th, across from 10th and near Florida? They have that large flat parking lot. Why not go into an agreement with the church? I don't know if they'd be amenable to it, but you could build a multi-story parking garage and give the church however many spaces they have in their flat lot right now. They have 150 spaces or 200 spaces, and then, we get above that, and maybe you could work it without buying the land. And it seems more in downtown than this stuff is up on 192. Just a thought. And I feel like I've mentioned it for a while, but then I said something to staff the other day, and they're like, I've never heard anybody say that. So I guess maybe I'm just saying it one-on-one and not to the right person. But, that to me seems like the perfect place for a parking garage. And if you could work out a deal and get the land for free and build the parking garage, do something like that.
Could I just respond to that? I apologize. I forgot to mention this in my original presentation. One of the other reasons why we wanted to locate a parking structure closer to 192 is because Lynx has indicated that they will be removing the number 10 off 10th Street and putting it on to 192. And as such, we would have the opportunity to designate that parking structure as a multimodal facility and able to get funding from DOT to help with the construction. We don't know the magnitude of what we would, if it's 10%, 50%, 100% at this point, but that's part of the reasoning behind why we located it there. Also, the fact that we're getting ready to work on a bike path along Florida Avenue, it would make sense to bring that would then connect the downtown to the lakefront. So just want to give that extra information.
Okay. One of the thoughts I had, during your presentation, and you and I have these conversations all the time, is how do we get people to redevelop? How do we get them, how do we spur this? How do we do this? And, we've been changing all of our codes and putting stricter, land development codes and architectural codes and doing all this stuff. So, when you say, we'll control the signage and control the uses and it'll redevelopment, but shouldn't we be getting people to do that for us versus us, putting all of our money into that? That's just what I feel like. What could we do to get people to redevelopment in the way that we want versus us expending the dollars? And then kind of my last thoughts were maybe to do some selective acquisition for me. Maybe the stuff south of US 192, the vacant land that's next to Veterans Park, that's $480,000. Maybe that makes sense for us to do some expansions there. And then I also was thinking, if they're going to sell the property, maybe they'd be more willing to, if we need right-of-way on New York Avenue, or we need right-of-way on Pennsylvania, or we need corner clips or places for signage to go, because we haven't historically had, could we buy that from them? You know, buy corner clips, easements, right away, things like that to make what we're trying to do better, but not have to buy the whole, you know, $5.8 million. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Councilman Cooper?
Thank you. Andre, do we have an appraisal that has been done for the city of St. Cloud?
No, because we don't have authorization to pursue
you
it,
don't,
so
but
so
I'm
we
just-
would not do a appraisal.
That would be one of the first things we
Sure.
want to do, I would think. Do we have a plan prepared for the entire project? I mean, is that pretty much, that's the complete project, what you're showing, everything?
Again, because we don't have authorization, we're not willing or able to expend a lot of effort and money until we get the go-ahead, and then we'll go full bore and, you know, identify things that you're interested in us looking at or negotiating with the seller. But at this point, we're trying to present to you a general concept for you to understand what could be, but we haven't done full due diligence or any detailed analysis at this point. We wanted something
All right.
for discussion.
Do we have any cost analysis, what it would cost to tear down all of the buildings that Kisselback has? Because we would want raw ground to build all of these facilities you've got. So do we have some kind of price on that? That's
Again.
over and above what Kisselbacks want.
Sure, and that is part of the analysis that we would do to bring back to you and say, here's the total cost that could be incurred.
It appears to me that it just looks kind of like it's a real expensive thing, and I'll agree with Ms. Matheny. I think we're almost in the same thing we did 17 years ago. We still got a portion of it, Stephen Plantation, you know? And I'm just a little bit leery of that. All right, last question, or maybe not the last. How do we know if there's not a pool of oil and other hazards under the property and possibility off-site that could be possibly that we would have to clean up? Of the two garages, wait a minute, the two garages we had there, we had restaurants, two restaurants. We had a mechanic shop that burned down. What's underneath all that stuff? Who's going to ensure that we don't have the same thing we've got over here?
I think the city manager wants to, the city attorney wants to say something. I just would say, those are the things that will be uncovered during due diligence.
I'm sure there'd be a lot of oil.
I'm not disputing
spilled
that. I'm just saying
for
it would be
years.
discovered at that time because we would do a phase 1 and phase 2, possibly phase 2 environmental assessment of the site.
Yeah, anytime you got two of those garages right there, you know, they were selling oil and changing cars and stuff like that and doing work, mechanics that burn down and stuff like that, I have a problem. Does Kisselback done any environmental study on any of that I just brought up?
That would be a question for Mr. Kisselback or his
He's shaking his head, so I
representative.
assume he
I don't
probably
know.
did. Last question, last thing. Mr. Wright, he's got property not a block away from there, a whole complete block. It's valued at $1.3 million. It's been almost on the market for 2 years now, still for sale. One of the almost as good prime property that we've got looking at Kisselback right now. It ain't selling. There's not even a buyer to come along and say they want to take it. You know, we still on the Stevens Plantation. We've got Black Rock on our back. You know, we've got the power plant that's on our back. We've got the police, fire, and EMS that's on our back in the next 2, 3, 4 years. We've got a lot of stuff on our plate that we need to look at right now that might be a little more important than just buying some property and then trying to subdivide it out and get more restaurants. I understand it's a good idea, and I love to have restaurants, you know, but if we've got a lot of other things that are super important right there, where do you put it? Where do you put it in? Where do you slide it in the slot and say, well, we're going to work on it here, and we've got 4 other things that we need to do first.
Right.
And we've already talked about it.
So, Mr. Cooper.
Uh-oh, we're getting wound up now.
No, so you want to respond? Because I had an idea. So, Mr. Cooper, what we were talking about is projects that the CRA is responsible versus what the city government is responsible for. And so, as a CRA, that's what CRA does. It does redevelopment of blighted properties to bring them back into viable use to enhance the city. And we have
I understand use and this and over here. I do understand what you're talking about. Okay. But it's still money and it's money. And we've got to find money. We got to find money for both of them, you know.
And
so,
I have the finance director here that can speak to that if you like. We have asked her to help us figure out how we would actually fund this, and she has done some legwork on that.
Mm-hmm. I don't have any problem buying one portion or 2 that we would need, that the city could use right off the bat and could turn around and, like O'Doherty's, and could sell it right away within a year. But if we're going to hold it for 5 or 10 years, it's the same thing as what you got out the Stephen Plantation then.
We have not yet identified a time frame. At the very best, our time frame would be up to 18 months to finalize any planning that would occur and lay out a very definitive schedule for disposing of the property, because that would coincide with the time frame that Mr. Kisselback needs in order to purchase a new building.
But you've got 1 year.
In addition, we would also have the ability to control and to manage the aesthetics of the city, to identify a place in terms of a location where cars coming from Melbourne going west would not just automatically drive past on 192, would actually know that this is an important location, that's the entrance to the heart of the city, which is the downtown. And I think Main Street would support me on this in the fact that it's important to identify your downtown and redevelop it in a way that would benefit the citizens of St. Cloud. And so I think this is such a unique opportunity. I'm real passionate about this one more than anything else because we have now had the ability to control how our downtown entrance looks and how people see the city of St. Cloud. Right now, there are 2 blue mast arms, and that's it. And anyone can just drive past them and would never know that we have a downtown. I've had conversations with the Deputy City Manager, and she's indicated that there are folks that don't even know, that live in St. Cloud, that don't even know where the downtown is because they've never seen anything that would identify. So I think this is an opportunity for us to at least control how the entrance to downtown looks. So that's kind of why I'm so concerned about your comments.
Well, I agree with you to some extent, but at the same time, you've got commercial property right there that he's got that he would put up for sale, and if the city doesn't take it, it goes out for bid. I'm sure that pretty quickly it'll be broken up and smaller down, and it's all commercial property anyway. So it doesn't make good sense to go build homes. So it's going to be something commercial. It's going to be there anyway.
We're not proposing to build homes.
Wait a minute. Let me finish. I'll let you talk for about 20 minutes. Give me 5. So anyway, it just seems like to me, when they go and a developer goes in there and they want to build something, they're going to build what they want to build. It's within the restraints of what the city's already got on the books. It's not you're going to be drawing nice, pretty pictures that you've shown us tonight. It may or may not even be close to that. Because even if the city buys it and turns around and sells it back out again, we're flipping it. That's about all we're doing, really. And you're going to get somebody that's going to come there and build something that could be anything that they wanted to build. So you can't not stop what they want to build. I mean, I just can't see they could do that.
Yes. I respectfully disagree because we are not flipping 980 New York. We
No,
bought
it's
it.
almost going to be the same thing. You just
We
don't call it
bought
something
it,
else whatever you want
and
to.
we have laid out some stipulations, which you just did a few minutes ago, about how you'd like to sell that property. And you talked about trying to put in a reverter clause and other things. So I'm not sure how that's any different than what we would do with this other property on New York and 192.
Mr. Sturgeon.
Yes, thank you. I received this from Mr. Askey today. He's actually in Japan, and I spoke to him earlier in the week. And so he sent me a text message, which I converted to an email. He says, "Hi, Bill. I want to read this into the record. I have limited email, so sorry I have to text you. I will not be at the meeting on Thursday. I'm writing this in regards to the possible Kisselbeck purchase. I'm open to the idea and hope the rest of the board is to at least look at what the contract would state. How are we paying for it, and what are the plans for the future of the project? I like that we, as a board, we can state what we wish to have in the location or what is being developed in the location. I would assume that location is zoned for car wash or storage units." He's basically saying he doesn't want car washes or storage units. So I wanted to read that into the record. I'll give you a copy of it, Jesse.
All right.
And I also, if I could, Mayor, just say, I understand exactly what Mr. Cooper's saying, and, we've all had to suffer through, for at least the last 3 years. I've been the manager, the Stevens Plantation thing, and many, many years before that. This council had nothing to do with that. But this is a community redevelopment agency. That is exactly what a CRA is supposed to do. We're supposed to look at redevelopment. So we have an opportunity here to buy a piece of property. We have pledged money through an interlocal agreement with the county that would cover the coupon payment for that. In addition to that, the city, interestingly, has never put any money towards that CRA. And this year in the budget, I'm going to propose we put some money, our allocation into that. So again, this is a project that can help the city grow. This is the CRA. This is not the city. It's so hard. I understand that you have to sit in a different chair each day, but that's exactly what the CRAs were designed for, to redevelop the downtown or different blighted buildings throughout the community. Thank you.
Mr. Loading.
Well, I have a whole different spin on things. Member Matheny and Member Cooper, I listened to what you're saying, and you sound like council, and we're the CRA, and we are supposed to reinvest in this community with our CRA dollars, and I think this is a great opportunity, and I hear you say, oh, well, those the most important properties on this whole, when I look at it differently. It's those 2 blocks between New York and Pennsylvania and Florida. Those are the most 2. The other ones are cheaper, so we should go, I just think that you say, oh, well, we should just go over this other, but that's not important. That's across the street. We have that Veterans Park over there that don't hardly ever get used because it's across the street. It's not downtown. If we were able to pull something off like this and the numbers work, and I mean the numbers have to work. If they don't work, then you don't do it. But if they work, you do it. Because now that becomes the face of St. Cloud downtown. And on Ms. Matheny mentioning on 10th Street, putting a parking deck. Okay, so we're hiding our parking deck. No, we have to have it out there on 192, where everybody, every day, commutes, not only the commuters every day, but everyone else that drive down 192. What do they see? Now, they have these big structures, a parking structure, and retail, and I'd like to see residential. I'm all for this if the numbers work, because this is what I have been envisioning for 10 years for St. Cloud. This type of structures with retail, believe it or not, we need residential. We need residential on those second, third, fourth, fifth floors. We need that because now those people are downtown, which generate a population downtown that supports a downtown. And that's what will build this downtown. And, I always thought, man, this would be great and everything, but I always say, well, we're probably going to have to put it down here on 10th Street, But I envisioned this. I said, well, it'll probably be all down here and everything. But we need it out there. And all of a sudden, it's thrown in our lap. We have to look at the numbers. We have to do our due diligence on this because it's important. It's important for the city of St. Cloud to move forward. That's our face out there. Let's not hide back here on 10th. Let's go out front. Let's be out there where everybody sees us and say, man, what's down there? This is impressive out here. What's down there? Let's go down here. Let's check out this historic St. Cloud. So I don't know. I have a whole different view of it. And I understand the hesitation with Stevens Plantation, and believe me, I don't know that much about it, only what I read and hear and everything, but I think this is a whole different animal. That, you got into residential where developers are doing that day in and day out. That should never, I don't think they should ever got into that. This is different. This is CRA. This is community redevelopment for our downtown. And I think, and it's not only downtown, but it's our 192 corridor. It's both downtown in the 192 corridor. That's what I think. Maybe I talked too long.
Just appreciate your passion. It's great. So I appreciate the property owner bringing this to our attention and giving us the opportunity to talk about it and try to figure out if we can come up with something. You know, I agree this is something I think we need to look into. The valuation in my mind, just like when we talked about the other property that thankfully we'll be moving on with, you know, it's just the valuation to me is just something that's a little off. Just for reference, the city of St. Cloud owns about 16 acres downtown. And a lot of it we've just been sitting on as parking lots, and we even as the city and with funds of the CRA haven't done anything to redevelop even some of the properties that we own as the city. To me, part of the reason and the ability of the CRA is to help break down barriers for property owners to reinvest and redevelop their own properties. Not necessarily always us buy it, try to fix it up and do something with it, or us do the RFP process, but just remove those barriers or incentivize to try to get something that might not be the highest and best use right now, but being able to see the future and it will be the highest and best use instead of just one story now, do things that are multi-story and build a little bit more of a nucleus for some of these properties downtown. I agree this is a gateway into town. Vice Chair Matheny's comments about doing something at a minimum to at least get better signage, get better frontage, landscaping, beautify essentially some of that gateway, which is something I think we need to put together for the entire, because the CRA stretches almost tip to tail of this whole area of 192. Do something to help beautify and incentivize to do some of that. But, you know, it's just one of those of $6 million. We're talking, the city is talking about Hastings Ranch for $6 million. It's just a lot of these are nice to have, not need to have at the moment. But I feel a whole lot better about this as something that can help with the city than some of those other projects. So, I'd like to know what everyone else thinks.
Well, I certainly would find myself in Mr. Loading's camp. You know, I've always driven by and when it's a car dealership and often thought to myself, wow, wouldn't it be incredibly advantageous if the city owned this property, or at least there was something here that contributed more to bringing traffic to downtown. I'm certainly concerned about the money, but I think it's certainly something that we need to investigate. And what can the CRA do? What are the numbers? Are there other things that temporarily can be done with the property and the buildings that would help offset the ultimate immediate cost of the facilities? I understand that you know, Mr. Kisselback would want to stay there for a while because he's not going to be able to build his new facility right away. That would be some significant income that would help offset the cost of this facility or this land. Are there some temporary uses that would benefit the city that could be explored to use those buildings until, you know, this isn't something you start tomorrow. This is a long-term investment and project. I mean, is there something there with the police needs, fire, our own administrative needs that, I've heard, we're certainly out of space also. Is there something temporarily that could be done with the buildings that are there that would help pay for this investment? Out of all the things that have certainly come before us, I certainly like the Hastings Ranch thing, but I think this is far more significant as far as what it could eventually contribute to the economic development of our city. It would certainly be a challenge for us financially, but again, I think this is a CRA issue that I would certainly like to see us pursue investigating further. What is the bottom line, and could we do this? And, I just think it's a significant opportunity at this time. Ms. Matheny, you had your light on.
Thank you. So after hearing Mr. Loading's impassioned speech down there, that's probably the most excited I've seen you up here. I think maybe I do think a little more like council than CRA, but, I'm firmly in the camp that the numbers legit have to work out. And the one thing I want to say, too, is even what the city manager just said is a little, disturbing. It's like the point of the CRA is it's not supposed to be city money. It was created, unfortunately, at the peak of the economy, and then we never, for many, many years, no money came into the CRA because the taxable value dropped so bad. Osceola County, out of the goodness of their heart, frankly, have been giving us the money that's in the agreement. And so to say we're going to take city money and put it into the CRA is not what the CRA is. So, it is supposed to be an increased taxable value that comes to us, not to take city funds and move them in.
I misstated that. There's a formula that the city's supposed to be contributing to that.
The city is not supposed to be contributing. It's supposed to be an increase in taxable value. There's a ceiling that's set, and the differential is what funds the CRA.
Yep.
So it comes straight from taxable value. So when that agreement was put into place, a calculation was done estimating what it could be in the future. And luckily, the county has been providing that money all these years, but, frankly, they could just say, sorry, budget tight, that's not what the CRA is, we're not providing the money. So that's why I want a real detailed look that it's legit money that, we can sustain, and we're not gonna be taking city money and moving it in to like cover costs, because that's not the intent, so.
Mr. Chairman, our finance
Go ahead.
director is here, so she can speak to the possible funding options. But again, you're very correct. We would have to make sure the dollars work. if
Yeah,
we
I don't
pursue
need
it.
to get into the
Okay,
details
okay,
off the
very
cuff
good.
here. I mean, for me, I'll move it forward to see what they come back, but,
Mr. Davis.
well, it's not city money, like you said, we're gonna move city money. That's not
The
what-
city is currently struggling with where to put a first responder campus.
You need to get closer to your mic, please.
Sorry, the city's currently struggling with where to put a first responder campus. Have we looked at a potential of putting police and fire in this site?
I like it.
I have not. That would probably be a good question for
part of
Mr.
it.
Gauntlet at the time that we talk about the site. And to your point about an interim use, we have discussed that as well, but we have not had any formal discussions yet.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking interim, I'm thinking more permanent solution, but you have parking garages, you have lots of police and fire type vehicles that need parking spaces. Obviously, City of Orlando's police department is in a downtown urban setting, and I'm not thrilled with the idea, but I
The
actually
unfortunate
could kind of warm
thing
up to
with
this a
that
little
is
bit.
that it would not generate any taxable revenue to the city because it would be city property and city use. We are trying to redevelop it to
Yeah.
allow for a use
get it.
by the private sector
But
and generate revenue.
I get that, but you're gonna have some parcel off the tax records for police and fire campus, whether it's here or somewhere else, so.
But that's a city issue. This is a CRA issue that we're trying to reconcile.
I don't know.
It all ties together.
One of my concerns about this is, we're talking about residential right on 192. I don't know. I wouldn't want to necessarily be living there with all that noise coming out of that traffic. The other thing is, if we do it, and I'm not totally against this one, I actually kind of could potentially warm up to this idea. But I think you're going to see 192 expand out to 8 lanes, probably not in my lifetime, but it will expand. You have to touch 192. Well, I know everybody said that about every road in Orlando, 436, 434. It will get expanded. I'd hate to see us build right in there if we, at some point in time when we're planning this, and don't leave some. What's the worst you could have? You could have a wider sidewalk area than you need for now or something. So that's just my couple of thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Well, I'd like to make a motion that we at least authorize the city manager to pursue the possibility of purchasing a property and come back with, financing and options, and at least for us to consider again.
And I second it.
And we have a second from Mr. Loading. Mr. Trace, would you like to comment?
We just dealt with this with a piece of property that we kind of gave some authorization and that a contract came back. I at least, if we do anything with this, I want an appraisal done by our group before we even talk about terms or anything, or.
Sure, I have no problem with that at all.
Like, I don't want to see a contract before I see an appraisal.
I want the ground to be checked and see if there's any oil or any spills or hazardous or anything like that.
Mr. Mazares.
Well, that's what I was putting my line of, just to get clarification on where the board wants to go with this at this point. What Mr. Trace just suggested to, if we're not going to bring back a contract, then what we're basically bringing back is additional information for you to consider whether you want to move forward. And if that's what the board wants, and that's fine. You don't necessarily need a motion for that, but we'll certainly take that. But as we have with other properties that the city has been involved in, even the CRA, is we have brought back contracts that have an extended due diligence period in, which would give the CRA agency the ability to have an appraisal done. I would suggest and would recommend that you not perform any sort of due diligence testing on this until you are under contract. So that wouldn't come back before the next meeting. However, I would suggest that you have a fairly extended due diligence period if you did bring back. That's another option.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go in that direction, then essentially what we're doing is we're just bringing back more information for you to consider whether you want to do this.
Yeah.
But that extended due diligence period, in my mind, would have almost the ability to walk away from it for any reason.
Complete free look
The city.
period.
But I'm not sure why they would want to take it and have the property tied up.
Well, I think at a piece of property in this location, based on its prior use, an existing use, and the value that you're talking about, I think pretty much every prospective buyer of that property is going to look for a due diligence period, a complete free look due diligence period before they enter into any contract. So I don't think if the CRA agency board was going to do that, that would be an unusual request given this type of development project.
Don't you think there's a dealership out there somewhere that would jump at this in a heartbeat? There's some dealership that wants here and would take that building in a minute.
I don't know that, Mr. Davis, of course. I do know that dealerships being in downtown urban areas like this are a thing of the past.
Sure.
And they are not looking for locations too much. So maybe a smaller dealership like you may have seen in some other larger cities of maybe a not a main brand, but my experience, and we've been dealing with all around Central Florida, dealerships are moving outside of these areas into different areas where they have the ability to grow and the ability to have more space for their vehicles.
Well, that's partially true, but don't you think somewhat that's the flavor of the month because they all want to flock to a certain location this year, and 5 years from now, there's a new in-location for dealerships to be in.
I don't disagree with you, but
part of that is
as planners will tell you, they deal with what people bring them and what the market bears, and that's what we're seeing these days. So I guess
Well, I say bring back a contract with whatever provisions in it that allow us to get the appraisals ultimately done in due diligence, whatever.
Well, there's two ways. We could get an appraisal done or see if there is an appraisal done before the next time or fairly quickly. By that I mean a few weeks. but, or you could wait until after you're under contract and get an appraisal done.
But what are we going to put in the contract? Will you agree to buy it for appraised value, or we agree to buy it for a percentage, or?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's an asking price. So if you did have an appraisal that, and we've dealt with contracts like this before, if during a due diligence period you got an appraisal and you found out that the appraisal was less than the contract price, then the CRA would have the ability to back out of the deal.
But not just that, because it's a free look. So, yeah, we'll agree to pay $20 million for this property, but we got an extended period, and, oh, by the way, now we're not going to.
Well, and that happens all the time.
Not with very many savvy sellers, it doesn't, but I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm not sure we're not premature on a contract.
Well,
Really, isn't it more of an option?
Well, it's up to direction of the motion, but we understand if you're not, I just wanted to point out that if you're not going to direct staff to negotiate and bring back a contract, what we're essentially doing is just bringing back more information for you to consider at a later meeting. And if that's the intention, if that's the intention of the board, then we can move forward with that.
Could you clarify what additional information you need for us to bring back? Because if we're not doing the phase 1 and phase 2, as the city attorney just advised, then I'm not sure what.
I think Mr. Trace talked about maybe how you're going to pay for it, basically, right?
Appraisal and money.
Appraisal and how it's going to be paid for.
So appraisal.
Mr. Trace?
So just for a point of reference, and I think Shelley's going to present this, but we have about $1.2 million in contingency for the CRA. Another $450,000 that'll likely come back with the sale in New York. So $1.65 million. We're talking about almost $6 million piece of property. I'm almost fine if the property owner wants to put it on the market, because the fair market value is even, I feel better about that, of if someone else brings an offer than appraisals, because that's, not worth the paper they're written on most of the time. I don't think it would be a national car lot either, because that's just competition to, whoever's moving, right? It'll be, if anything, it'd be a used car lot, and that would be far worse than anything we have now. So, if anything, in appraisal, but, we'd have to figure out where the money comes from.
And I wouldn't want to spend money on the level 1 or level 2 environmental at this point. Two reasons. I think it's premature. I don't have
Yeah, it'd be a little bit too early, yeah.
but I don't have quite the same concerns. That building's not that old. Ford Motor Company would have required those environmental assessments to have been done before they ever lent the money for that dealership to be built for Jimmy, I think. So, right, that's right. So,
Can we ask him?
Yeah, and if you're going to have engaged in discussion with the audience, we'll need to have them come to the.
yeah, so I don't have this. So anyway, I'm not interested in spending personally the money on that, because I don't have that concern. I think that ship's already sailed. And the likelihood of this current dealership having an environmental mishap is probably pretty slim.
Bill, Mr. Sturgeon, could, the appraisal that we had for Stevens Plantation was done here local. Are they qualified enough to be able to know what this is going to be? Or should we go look out of the city? I know there's good and bad, but I'm a little leery. I'd rather maybe look out this time.
The question is,
Yes,
find somebody outside the city that's a commercial appraiser?
I'd feel better, I think, this time.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because we just did the local here, the last one. I'd like to find somebody at least, I don't care, just somebody else, and let's see what the price is.
It's currently on the tax rolls for 2.6, Andre? Approximately.
At the assessed value, yes.
So my gut feeling is, I'm sorry, is the 5.8 is probably not terribly far off. If the property appraiser has it at 2.6, in today's market, the value probably is somewhere close to the 5.8. I don't think that's hugely off.
May or may not, no.
There is some discrepancies, though, on the property appraisers. I'm not trying to call them out, but the used car dealership, the 0.47 acres, it is listed as vacant. And it's
The one down.
assessed, yes, it's assessed as vacant, so that's.
Because it's got a trailer on it and not a structure.
But,
Yeah,
but it's still developed, so it's kind of suspect when you see vacant and it's being used. So that's why I question the validity of the numbers.
Mr. Manzares, can you help us here?
In the past, when we've dealt with these kind of, before we've been on the contract, the board or the council has authorized an appraisal. So if you'd like us to move forward with an appraisal, and we certainly can do that. I don't know what the actual cost will be, but it'll be probably in the couple $1,000 range. And obviously, the CRA can have an appraisal done if this board wants to do that. That's about the only other piece of information you're going to be able to get before you enter into a contract, with the exception of your finance people explaining how we might be able to pay for it.
Councilmember Matheny?
So when I had my briefing, I was told that this 5.8 was an appraisal. Is that not
The
accurate?
seller's appraisal.
Right, but it is an appraisal. I mean, it's not,
Yes, that's his.
it's not just
MAI?
like pulled out of thin
Made as
air.
instructed.
What's what?
Mr. Davis?
MAI, that's a appraisal designation, but in the industry, the joke is made as instructed.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I would like to move forward with the appraisal, and then we could work with this number value roughly to like have them also be coming back with how the heck we would pay for that. I mean, I think.
And if we can't pay for it, then
and
we back
can't-
out.
Right, exactly. Like, so you could run those concurrently, just have staff working on that, just assuming it's the ballpark figure, and then do an
But if I was
appraisal.
Mr. Kesselback, I wouldn't want to sit here for 2 months. while
Right.
we-
Bill, could you find somebody else out of the city?
I'm fine with the appraisal we had on Stevens. I mean, I don't know how the other council or other board members.
Yeah, that
feel.
appraisal.
Mr. Sturgeon?
Clarification, that is direction from the board to find appraiser outside the city, and I also have,
That's not my direction.
okay, that's why I'm asking, is that direction from the board?
Well,
No.
we've done the local here for the last 2 or 3 times.
You just want qualified appraiser.
Exactly. Do they have the
Well,
certifications that they need?
Can
I will
someone
tell you
restate?
that when I,
There was a
Stevens
motion and a
Plantation.
Yeah,
we did-
I'd like to hear the motion again. I seconded it.
But just a
Wanna do
point
what
on the
now?
appraisal,
Mayor?
though. Is it super relevant because they're going to appraise it highest and best current use, which, let's say that's a car dealership. We're not buying it or intending to use it as a car dealership.
No.
So the value he puts on it is maybe of little or no relevance to the value it's going to be to the city for the redevelopment project. I mean, other than you just being able to tell the public, yeah, we didn't pay more than appraised value for it, it's going to have little value.
Well,
It's not going to have any relevance to the value to the city on what it's ultimately plans to do with the property. That would take a really extensive appraisal and some kind of plan on what the city planned to develop it. That, you're not going to get that.
You can't get that now.
That's right, exactly. So this appraisal, other than just making you feel good that you bought a car dealership is, for a fair price, is not going to be totally relevant.
We could ask if there's any wiggle room.
Mr. Sturgeon?
I also wanted to see if I could have the finance director come up. She actually went ahead and talked to the bond council and everything about bonding this, so if I could have her come up and speak for
Sure.
just a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
I don't have any objections to that. Come on up, Wendy. Ms. Colazo?
I know I'm getting that point too. Just going to the bathroom. I said, I'm getting that point too.
Good afternoon, Wendy Colazo, Finance Director. In the presentation of the possible options for financing this, one of the main strategies would be to pledge the funds from revenues from the CRA and bond this out. We got an estimate from the Bond Council for 11 years at a 3.52 interest rate at the current time that the estimate was done, which would produce a $354,000 a year payment. We are including, obviously, the component of $12,000 a month paid in lease payment by the owner at this time as an estimate to help contribute towards the paying of the $354 estimated note for the year. In preparation for the question of where we are with debt, we are at $99 million inclusive to all our business and governmental activities. We have paid off $2.5 million of debt a year for the last 10 years, and our ratios are causing us to have a great Moody's rating at a AA2, which is the highest we can get for a municipality. There's one more level that we can do. So our credit rating stands and our buying power is strong. PGM recommends that we can do this. We do not reach our taxable limit on taxable bonds with doing this purchase. There are other options if it changes and the makeup of this takes a turn and you want to do other developments like we were talking about, public safety or using it for city hall purposes. At that time, I would develop other strategies based to see if we could use things like impact fees for items or any other type of dollars. So until we know that and you move forward, I can develop those strategies. I'll answer any questions you may have at this point.
Councilmember Trace.
I'll let anyone else go first. I have a comment after.
Okay.
There you go.
Mr. Davis.
Did you deduct out the taxable revenue that you're currently getting from the property you're getting $13,430 a year in taxes? Did you deduct that out of your calculation there?
Yes, I would have to. Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
you
sir.
did that already?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So to me, there's a sometimes simple rule of some real estate development, and it's whenever possible, you buy property with cash, and if you need to, you develop with financing. And usually with something commercial like this, you develop with financing once you have leases in place, and you've got something, the money's coming in before you go out to financing for it. So buying property with financing mechanisms is just something I just don't fundamentally agree with. Even if it is redevelopment and it is good, but in this case, I think the existing showroom building is something that's a viable property as it is, as could redevelop into something office. The area where the shops are, that's something I think that might be good for us to buy and redevelop. And then the property across the street to where we can get parking for Veterans Park to kind of activate that space. But I don't think we need to buy the whole thing. And I think a lot of the value of that $6 million is in that one full block parcel with the building on it, the offices and everything that, has a lot higher value than the rest of the property.
Any other discussion, questions?
Would this affect any, what you're talking about, police, fire, and EMS, some bonding, would that lower the standards of
No, sir, because our ratios,
borrowing?
yeah, you can reference the 2018 CAFR. It gives you the ratios of our debt, which we're at 6.96, which is way below industry standard. We start worrying when we see 10% and 12% of that nature. So our debt ratio would not be
But
affected.
if we're talking about $30,000 as far as police, fire, and EMS, that's a lot of money to go bond against what you're talking about getting started here. And this is different, I
I
understand.
wish it was 30,000, sir. That would be a great.
Excuse me, 30,000,
Yes,
30
sir.
million, excuse me.
Correct.
I'll get it correct.
I think I'll keep it just for commentary clean. I think the question here is relevant to the CRA, not the city and that issue, because there's two different components
I
to that.
understand it's different, but that was why I was asking. The question, is it,
Overall, our ratios, no, don't project that. We already know that the 30 million ticket price can't be done as a whole, and it has to be phased out over a
phase
month.
it out?
So capability of bonding through the years, we definitely have that. Can we bond $30 million plus this, plus $5 million in Hastings? Absolutely not. That would be ludicrous, and you might as well tell me to go home because I'm not doing the right job for you.
Right, I got you. Okay.
Mr. Lodi.
Oh, I just want to make one comment. Keith said something about parking for Veterans Park. I think we really need, yeah, I just want to make that point. We need parking on this side of 192 because it's too dangerous to cross it. So we really need parking on this side, but that's it.
Any other discussion?
If I may just update the CRA, the update that I got, the 12,000 that was mentioned originally for the estimate that they're willing to lease back is actually $38,000 a month, and that's been confirmed.
All right.
For how long?
At least 18 months.
Okay, thank you. Well, the motion is that we authorize, on behalf of the CRA, the city manager and staff to bring us back a contract. The question was the appraisal issue. Are we wanting to attach that to it?
I don't know if the appraisal's really
Well,
necessary.
again,
To me, I don't,
Mayor, you are a public entity that's spending public funds.
Oh.
I would suggest to you that regardless of whether it means anything to contract, there is value in the sheer confirmation of the purchase price and having an independent appraisal done.
okay. Thank you for that, counsel. So we add and bring back with an appraisal.
Yes.
We ready?
Okay, can we,
Madam Clerk?
are they gonna read it, though? Are they gonna read? Can she read that back? It's been a long time. I just want to make sure we're.
I can try to summarize what I heard. in the-
I just,
don't know if she has it or
if
not.
she has it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to hear the motion.
So the motion was called by Chair Blackwell and seconded by Member Loading, and to bring back the contract and an appraisal? Is that what it? A
It was to
summary?
authorize the city manager to move forward with it and bring back a contract
For negotiation.
for negotiation purposes, and then what was added at the end was that we also want to do an appraisal. That's what I recollect.
And then you got a lot of homework to do, shows how we're gonna pay for it.
And then that was the next thing that we do
And-
concurrently. That was,
Well, what
that
you
was.
gonna build?
Denise.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Vice Chair Matheny,
Aye.
Councilmember Trace,
Nay.
Member Cooper,
Nay.
Member Davis,
Aye.
Member Loading,
Aye.
Chair Blackwell,
Aye. And the motion passes. Ms. Matheny?
So I just have a question for everyone. Since we have a lot of activity happening, should we just schedule another CRA meeting and maybe not squeeze it in front of a council meeting like we just discussed earlier? I think we got a lot.
Yeah, a lot of this.
I got a lot of stuff. Okay.
That's a really good idea.
Try to do the contract for the Makeson building at the same time?
Okay. So just schedule
Yeah, we'll
27th?
schedule a full CRA.
this,
Would the 27th work?
this CR meeting is supposed to last for 30 minutes. It got a little bit long, hasn't it?
You want to, I'm sorry, Mr. Tracy.
What, would the 27th work? Is a short one, or is it, we think it's
I
going to be
would
a?
just, whenever they
No, I
have
would-
their information ready.
Yeah.
Based on the discussion we've had on this one particular item alone, I would think that we wouldn't want to limit the CRA meeting on the night that you had a council meeting.
Right. I agree.
And we're gonna try to do the Makeson contract at the same time,
Same
right?
time.
Yes,
yeah.
we'll try to get something scheduled within the next 30
All right.
days.
Thank you. Now we're at CRA financials.
Yes. So, first, let me apologize. There's couple errors in the financials, so I hesitate to even bring it up on the screen. In going over the slide, I noticed that there was some incorrect totals. And that was because the first version of the financials that we received, there was an incorrect charge to the operations, and it reflected a significant number that was 51%, and that is what was incorrect. The actual operations expended to date is $60,009.14. And so the total for that column would actually be $315,745.72. In addition, the column for budgeted, the total is also incorrect. I'm not sure if we have some gremlins running on our computers, but that total for what's budgeted in the CRA is actually $2,364,262. So the actual percentage of year-to-date expended would be actually 7.5%, not 25%. And for operations, the amount expended year to date is not 51%, but in fact, it's 12%. So I apologize for the errors. We'll do better next time.
We need to make sure and send us out the,
Yes, I will do that.
Ms. Matheny.
So, errors aside, I like the format that you guys have. The one thing I had talked to the city manager about today was maybe adding another column with like unencumbered or something, because, you know, it'll say like operations is 484 and you've expended this much, but like, is there unencumbered funds within that line? I don't know. Or is all of that already in a contract with someone? That was just something I would.
The only place that would possibly occur would be under grants and projects. That would be the cleanest one to show what's unencumbered, because unless we have a contract, and we can look through that. But the others, like personnel, operation, those are already allocated to something from the past budget.
Yeah, that was just the thing when I looked at it, I thought, because we always have things pop up and we're like, oh, do we have money to cover that? And just, I know we have the contingency, but that's what I would like to see, an unencumbered number.
We can definitely do it for the grants and projects line to make sure that that 354,502 is actually completely unencumbered.
Right.
If we do have encumbrances, you know, we definitely deduct it and let you know.
Yeah, just an unencumbered column.
Sure.
On whichever, I mean, if it doesn't apply to them, then you just have a zero.
We'll be happy to do that.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, the intergovernmental transfer is the Osceola County portion, I'm assuming, correct?
No, that is a $12,500 monthly intergovernmental transfer from the CRA to general fund. And that is specifically for staff's work on the power plant rehab. We have a CIP for that, which is CR 200.
Where do we show the income from the county?
We don't on this.
Where is that coming in at, though? Or how much is that? My point I wanted to get to is, this year, is that not going to finally go up because of the assessed values?
Right. Well, it's not really, I mean, I hesitate to talk about it because I haven't read the agreement lately, but my understanding is it's not based on the assessed value. It's a set amount that was in the contract.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
It is a percentage. It's a
It's
matching
supposed to be a
percentage with the city, as I remember.
Need to speak in your mic so we can hear you. I'm sorry.
It's a percentage of it's the tax increment financing, it's the county's percentage, but.
No, it's not. This particular one is not.
Not in this particular situation. And we want to go back when this was created, back then, when we were putting this CRA together, the county did not want to follow the percentage increase formula that's set forth. And so there was essentially a flat amount that was dealt. We can look at the contract again.
I looked at it recently, and that's how it's written. It's written with increments.
Incremental, it's
I
based
thought
on.
those were estimated when I read it. I thought they were
They're
estimated amounts.
as I recall, and I don't have it in front of me, but as I recall, the interlocal agreement that created, and the ordinance that created the CRA, I think they're actually set up as minimums. But we certainly can look at it. This was a unique, when this CRA was created, this was a unique issue. And I appreciate the comment earlier about taking the arrows related to the creation of CRA, but I assure you that there were other people that took the CRA arrows when we created this thing in front of the Osceola County Board of County Commissioners, including members of staff who sit up there in front of them, me being one of them. The county had made changes to how this particular CRA was created, different than any other CRA that had been created. They did not follow the formula that was used with the city of Kissimmee, and we ended up negotiating a deal. So we can give a complete review of that if you want, and bring that back to you. I think it is a very appropriate question to find out what the revenue is that we're getting, which isn't showing up here on the budget. So.
Well, this is the document that's in part of that. That's the projected county. It's the projected revenues for the city and the county.
Yeah.
As a percentage.
Can I just transfer that?
Right. And they pay based on that.
I'm sorry?
And they pay based on that, but it's not based on the percentage of tax increment. It's just based on a calculation of percentages that they will pay.
As set
It's
forth in
different.
the agreement.
Right. It's not based on the actual rise in tax value over and above the base.
And I guess my long-winded.
I'll find that agreement. This
Mr.
document
Davis?
shows that differently. This is part of that document.
We will bring it back to you. We'll announce with the finance director and with the city manager and bring that back to you. Mr. Davis, I'd like to just comment on your question about where does the money from the county show up on this. This that you have with CRA Financials is only the expenditures, not revenues.
Okay.
If you'd like us to do that, we can.
Councilmember Trace.
Under operations, the $274,000 for other contractual services, what was that for? For some reason, I thought that money was moved to go to buy Makinson's.
I don't have the.
Oh, it's community
that's right.
policing.
Yeah, that's right. That's. What
But it shows nothing spent to date. I thought we were a quarter into that now.
It depends on when we receive the paperwork from the police department.
Okay. And that's the budget amount for the whole year?
Yes, it
207?
is.
Okay, perfect.
Mr. Davis, are you through?
I am.
Okay, so the next item, errors aside, is a breakdown, and I think this is correct, a breakdown of the building and site improvement grants to date. We have only one. We budgeted $75,000. The request for $16,295. The award amount was for $16,295, and the balance available for additional funding for the building and site improvement grant is $58,705. Moving on, at your desks, at your locations, you should have received a document that looks like what's on the screen. This is being provided to you. The clerk asked us that we provide this to this board. So I just want to make sure that you received it.
And can I just comment on that quickly?
Yes.
Mr. Davis and Mr. Loading, you have been invited by the state legislature to participate in 4 hours worth of ethics training this year. It's a new thing that was put in for CRA board members. So what we've done in the past is we've done a special training session because the council has to do that. But as members of the CRA board, you are now obligated to do that. So we will be setting that up, and you'll have to complete that before July of next year. So there's options to be able to do it outside of here, but what we'll probably do is try to set up another session so we can do it right here in the chamber so you don't have to go anywhere.
See you there.
The next item is members' update.
Are you through?
I'm finished.
Through? You want to move on to the staff report update?
That's what I just said.
That's it?
Yes.
That's all of it?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone on the board here have anything to bring before us? Does anyone in the audience have any comments you would like to make?
No, if it's something we haven't talked about already, yes, you can do that.
You can. If you have a question, I'm not sure what it is yet.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Karen Crane, 702 Alabama Avenue. I've lived in St. Cloud for 30 years. I love this town. It has come to my attention that there is not enough short-term rentals in St. Cloud. What is the plan for that? Do we have any in place for families that want their families to come to stay for a week with them? The only, you don't have enough viable motels on 192 is not for families. I've heard stories that people come down thinking that it's a motel, and one is a crack house, another is pedophiles. Is there anything we can do about getting, short-term rentals? Maybe a committee to make sure and force the responsible owners to have people in there? I know I've been asked, people that live here that want families to come in. So what is any plan on that, to have that in here?
Mr. Mr. Sturgeon, is that something you could get with her?
Yeah, I'll
address?
get with Mr. Anderson and her, and we can discuss her concerns.
And that's a bigger issue than, that's beyond the scope of this particular
CRA.
board here.
Okay,
But the planning department can, Mr. Sturgeon can help you with it.
Planning department.
That gentleman's
Gentleman
right to the right there.
He'll give you his card.
Because I was told, I went to planning and zoning and said to come in here and ask questions about the
Well,
concerns I had, so I would talk to him about
That
it.
might, well,
I
Then we'll
appreciate,
take good care of you.
Okay, I will.
All right.
Thank you.
appreciate you hanging out for 3
I
hours.
love everything that you're doing, and yeah, I'm interested, and I haven't been involved in it, but I have things that I've done, and now I'm going to get more involved in what you're doing.
Get-
And
get
I-
on a
Thank you,
committee.
Ms. Crane. We're very grateful for your
Thank you very
questions,
much.
and Mr. Sturgeon will take good care of you.
Okay, and I'll talk to you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public? Come on up.
Good evening. It's getting a little late in the evening. Sorry to hold you up here with this, but I had a couple of
Could you
words.
state your
I
name and
wanted-
address for the
I'm
record,
sorry.
please?
Wallace Wilson from Kissleback Ford. And I want to clarify just a couple issues real quickly with you. You did ask about prior testing on a Phase 2 before the purchase of that land and any of the accompanying lands across the street. That was all done. And that was tested right along the border of Joe's garage also, because we had concerns with that maybe having a plume leaking out. Nothing was found. It was a clear deal. And you're right, the lenders are not going to lend a nickel on it if you don't have something like that in your hand. The other thing was the appraisal. We did have an MAI done, and it was an as-use appraisal, as Mr. Davis was saying. So that's not appraising it as the vacant ground. It was as an as-used facility. If there was any other questions that you had about there, I'd be happy to address them for you now. Kissleback Ford has always been a good corporate individual for the city, and they'll continue to do the same in the future, no matter how this works out. Thanks.
Wait a
Thank
minute. Oh, sorry.
Oh, we have a couple questions here,
Oh,
if you don't
okay.
mind. Ms. Matheny?
Thank you. Would you mind providing those reports to the city, that you have the testing and any of kind of environmental
Yes,
stuff
we
that
can
was
get
done?
those, we can get those and provide.
That would be great.
Excellent.
The other two gas stations, would you give the testing for that too?
Only for the one across the street. I'm not sure which other station you're
You got one
talking.
that was Amico and Gulf, right on New York and 10th Street, right on the corner.
Well,
Has that ever been tested?
13.
13th?
13th,
all
excuse
of the main property and the property across the street and the property down the street where the used car lot, all those were bored and tested.
Now, what I'm asking, 13th Street and New York, right there on the corner, that was it was two gas station. It was a Gulf station and it was an Amico when I was a young kid.
Under our property.
Yes, sir, long before you were here.
Okay, under our property,
Yes,
we
sir.
did the borings. There is no indication of any spillage or contamination.
You've got some,
Yes,
Backup.
and we'll be happy to share that.
I'm talking about here, not over there. Okay.
Mr. Mazares?
Well, I was just going to point out,
Yeah.
a typical term in any contract that we would enter into would require them to give us all copies of any and all studies and documents that they have
I
with
want to
regard
see
to the
that,
property.
yes.
We'll be happy to do that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Davis, your light is on.
Oh, I'm sorry? Not intentionally.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Do we have any other comment from the audience?
What time's breakfast?
Amen.
Mr. Anderson, do you have anything else?
Just informational item that the next CRA is scheduled for Thursday, April 2nd at 6 p.m.
We're going to change that, though, right?
But I'm just saying that was the
That'll
next
have to be
scheduled
updated.
one at this point. Yes.
All right. I have nothing else on my agenda. We are adjourned.